Super. Right, we are live. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, which is coming today from the Civic Suite in Huntingdon. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the press and public who have joined us here today, and also those who are joining us online or watching the meeting on our live stream. Welcome to all of you. Couple of bits of housekeeping. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please do feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, however, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or to vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? Do just take the chance to double check that now, please. There are no fire drills scheduled today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all move to the muster point will be directed by the Democratic Services Officer. So, Joe, I think you're going to be leading us out in that situation. I would remind members and officers that the meeting will be recorded. My name is Councillor Anna Smith and I am Chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee and also a representative for Cambridge City Council. What I suggest is rather than go around the room, but for the purposes of the live stream particularly, if people could introduce themselves the first time they speak, that would be really helpful, just so we know who we have. Just in terms of the agenda, to say that we have an item at the end of the agenda on Peterborough Station Quarter. I just want to give a highlight to anyone that may be here specifically for that item, that it, for various reasons, which I will explain when we get to that point, it is my intention to ask that we go into closed session for that. So I don't want anyone basically sitting here waiting for 2 hours for an item that we're then going to have to exclude the press and public from. So just wanted to be clear on that at the beginning. Okay, you can follow the agenda along. We are on items 1 and 2, which are announcements, apologies for absence. So in terms of apologies, would the governance manager let us know of any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Andy Williams, the Business Board representative.
Okay, thank you very much. Or one of the Business Board representatives, because we do also have Rebecca Stevens here. So welcome, Rebecca. So item 2 is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-statutory disclosable interest in any item being considered today? Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chris Seaton from Fenland District Council. I have 2 interests to declare. I'm a trustee of the FAT Community Transport and also chair of the Hereward Community Rail Partnership.
Thank you. I have one as well. In terms of the East West Rail item, like I imagine a few of us here, I am a councillor for a ward that runs alongside the railway line. And I also am an owner-occupier of a flat that is in that ward. It is quite near the railway line as well. It is not within the kind of red zone on the map. But obviously, particularly when we're discussing things like, say, the eastern entrance to the station, that is going to affect my ward. So I do not believe that that is an interest that means that I'm not able to vote, but I wanted people to be aware of that. Councillor Shaler, I think you may wish to say similar.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'm Councillor Neil Shaler, Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee on the Cambridgeshire County Council. The East West Rail route actually comes through my division. So I don't know if I'm sure it's not pecuniary, but I thought I should at least mention it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any other interest to declare? And a reminder that you can declare interest at any point during the meeting. And if something comes up where you feel it is really urgent to declare an interest, it's probably the one time, unless there is a dire emergency, of course, where I will let you just shove on the microphone and shout and make sure that we're in there, because it's very important that if you remember something, we can get that noted. So item 2 is the minutes and action log. Is the committee happy to approve the minutes from the 4th of November 2024 as an accurate record and to note the action log? Okay, I don't see any disagreement with that, so I'm going to sign that and I'm going to date it. and I'm going to write my name underneath because nobody can read my signature, and then I'm going to pass that across. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next item, which is public questions. We have received 3 questions from members of the public, all of which have been published on the website and circulated to members of the committee. Both Mr. Jones and Ms. Sykes are joining us online today, but we also have Reva Elliott and her colleague David Cope joining us here in the room for question 1. So what I would do is I will invite each person to read out their question, and then after that question, I will give a response. There will be an opportunity to ask a supplementary question following each response, and all of the responses will be published on the website after the meeting. So first of all, I'm going to invite to the table, and you'll be invited to come and sit just here at the end. So Reva and David, who are from the Hemmingford Hopper development team, are here in the room to ask question 1. And Reva, you're going to be asking the question. So.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to ask this question. Since 2017, we've been looking into the question of transport in the Hemmingfords. Given the lack of access to local transport for the Hemmingfords, can the Mayor commit to a community-led pilot that will show how we close the transport access gap for disadvantaged residents? And there are up to 40% deprived in one or more dimension across the Hemmingfords, according to the ONS census from 2021, and 15% of our children have free school meals at the primary school. There is a demand to consult with the Tiger on Demand. There's an opportunity to consult with the Tiger on Demand and other disparate transport services to provide a more joined up public transport service that will meet the need of the wider Hemmingford community with reliable access to schools, healthcare, employment, shopping, leisure, for example. Our proposed pilot could be the solution. This is a community-led project to help overcome isolation and loneliness with sustainability built in. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could just turn off your mic. Brilliant. So thank you so much for this. Thank you for coming in person. It's lovely when we have people in person or online to ask the questions. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you for what I know is already quite significant work that's being undertaken by Hemmingford residents. And this is a really good example of the need that residents have for that efficient, reliable public transport. I should point out, I imagine it is obvious, but I'm not the Mayor. But so I am the Mayor, and I have had a conversation about this answer. So do feel free, of course, to speak with him at another point. I know he would be really keen to do that. But now, it isn't possible at this point in time to commit to a pilot. And I know that isn't the answer that you would necessarily want at this point. So I want to explain why. So later in the committee, we are discussing bus reform. Now, whether we end up with a decision to franchise or not is going to have a big impact on the decisions we make on our bus network in the future. And in particular, of course, in the level of control that we might have over that network. So we're not in a position right now to give you that definite answer, because what we're able to do might depend on the decision that is made over the next few weeks. What I can absolutely commit to on behalf of myself and the Mayor is to continue to talk with residents like yourself about future needs, and specifically to have further discussions with you about your concerns in Hemmingford and about your plans for this community pilot once the Mayor has made his decision on bus reform. And whatever that decision is, we will have that conversation. It just allows us to have that conversation being well informed about the kind of environment that we're working in. So that's the answer I'm going to give today. You do have the chance for a follow-up if you would like to ask one.
Thank you. But given you're considering a franchising model, I know at this transport meeting for services, and we would welcome a review of your proposal that we can follow up at your next meeting, so that we can take our plans forward in a way that coordinates with your thinking.
Thank you. And we'd really welcome you coming to continue to engage at these meetings. It's really helpful. Now, because this was a question directly asked to the Mayor and he's here, is it okay for me to ask the Mayor to come in with an additional point? He's indicated that he'd like to do so. I'm asking. Yeah? Right. Chair's decision. The Mayor can come in.
Thank you. And thank you, Reva. Thank you for the slightly archaic way of doing this. And I appreciate it was directly to us and the way it was presented, it came first to the tick. And I would echo everything that Councillor Smith has said, literally on my behalf. The only thing I would add is that in the way that you and the community of the Hemmingford have conducted your approach to the Combined Authority, your understanding not only of your own local area, but of your willingness to engage with the Combined Authority in a sort of process of collaboration, I think that it is a very positive way to be going forward. And if I was to hark back to the efforts that were mimicked in the villages north of Peterborough, where with their support we were able to introduce a new bus and sustainable bus service, which allowed them to move through public transport from Peterborough to Stamford. I am very keen to recognise and continue this productive working arrangement, and I know your community is willing to put money in. I think this is the sort of thing that occasionally pilots, we have to be willing to occasionally take chances. We have to be willing to occasionally make mistakes when we go towards a better system in the future. But as has already been indicated by my deputy, is that there is a bigger picture here about the whole of the bus services for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, of which I am not predetermined in terms of any sort of obvious outcome. But I think these opportunities that you're presenting to the TIC and to the board as a whole are ones that we should really look on favourably going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
And I really would say, this is, we've had similar conversations that have initiated discussions on bus routes before at this very committee, where now there are buses running. So it's really great to hear you coming here, talking it through, bringing your evidence. It's always really helpful for us. So thank you very much. We're now going to move on to question 2. Question 2 is, is from Tim Jones, who is the chair of Cottenham Parish Council. Tim, I'd like to call you. I believe you're joining us online. Can we just do a quick sound check to make sure we can hear you before we start your question? Tim, could you say something, please? We can hear you loud and clear. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Do ask your question.
Over the last few years, which has added over 500 new homes, and over 100 of these are designated as affordable housing. And we've got another 100 probably in the planning process, again largely affordable housing, 2 significant rural exception sites. There are transport concerns in the village, and I think overall we are quite underserved. The transport concerns we have include the frequency and journey length of the existing City 8 service into Cambridge, which is every 40 minutes. At peak times, the lack of bus connectivity to other destinations, for example, Ely, the train stations and other transport hubs, the changes to the proposed Sutton to Oakington bus route, which was originally proposed to go through Cottenham, but is now bypassing Cottenham, as well as Hadnam and Wilburton, other local villages. And finally, the exclusion of Cottenham from the Cambridge e-scooter trial particularly, but also the Tiger on Demand bus. So with this as background, what is the Combined Authority's approach to improving access to public transport and active travel options specifically for the residents of Cottenham and the nearby villages?
Thank you. That's a really, really helpful question. So I'm going to give you quite a lot of specific comments around the Cottenham questions that you've raised. I think to set that in the context of, you can also see later in the committee, we have quite a few more strategic discussions coming up about what we do with our bus network. And I think it's important to see all of that in that context, because that is very much part of the picture for all our residents in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I'm going to give some answers. It's quite a long answer, but it probably won't be enough. So I will say I'm very happy to meet with you at another point to talk things through in more detail, perhaps with one of our officers to help us bring in that technical information. So you get a bit of a snapshot today. So first of all, you obviously referring to bus service 8, which is that main service that Cottenham residents rely on. And its frequency has worsened in recent years. It was 20 minutes, now it's 40 minutes, as you say. Now, this is a commercial bus service. It's operated by a commercial operator, and it is and I say this in a diplomatic way, disappointing that this service has been reduced because it provides less access for Cottenham residents. Now, our officer team have been engaging with that commercial operator to identify ideas about how they can boost that frequency back to what it was previously. We haven't yet, unfortunately, got to a solution, and I will ensure that we continue to have those conversations because we have to get those services improved. It's really important. So officers are working to assess future provision for the public transport network. They have undertaken a full network mapping exercise, and the draft mapping will be brought to the March committee for us to look at as a committee. And this will help inform the potential for developing a better bus network, which will build on the work of the preset funded improvements, but also help us to look ahead to that network. Now, I did want to mention bus service 8A. That will be extended to Milton Park and Ride later this year in line with the recommendation of the recent bus network review. So that service currently enables customers, as you know, and I'm saying this partly for so everyone else knows, the customers travelling from March, Chatteris and Wilburton to make onward journeys to Cambridge in Cottenham by extending to Milton Park and Ride. And we've done this in conversation, including with your representative on the TIC board, on the TIC committee. That will enable better waiting facilities for customers and also allow for onward journeys to be made to the Science Park and other business parks located nearby for Cottenham residents. In addition, the Combined Authority continues to fund a return journey to Ely on a Thursday and a Saturday. Also wanted to just focus specifically, you asked about the e-scooter trial. I think the key on this is it is a trial. So the trial expansion almost doubles the size of the existing trial area. And the focus when we were deciding how to extend that trial was to both bring in new developments and greenways and commuting areas. There was a very short time to prepare the application, and we also needed to ensure we could deliver it operationally. So that isn't to say that we won't consider further expansion of e-scooters. It will be considered through the micromobility strategy, and I have noted the interest from Cottenham in being part of one of those additional expansions, and I've already had a brief discussion with our officers who are in charge of that about that, so they are aware that you're interested in future participation there. You also talked about Tiger on Demand. I was lucky enough to travel on one of the first Tiger on Demand buses in Fenland the other weekend, and myself and the mayor are working with officers to assess further the potential for the expansion of that service. It's proving very popular. Now, whilst there is a need to balance the size of geography that vehicles cover to ensure capacity for passengers, we are keen to explore how this service can better meet community needs, particularly in rural areas, and further linking the towns and villages together across the region. It's really important. So that is a kind of mid-level of detail in answer to your question. I am happy, of course, to meet further, but you do also have the chance for a follow-up now.
No, thank you for that. That's useful information, and I would really welcome a meeting at some point in the not too distant future to try and put some more detail to some of this. And I also note the franchising report that you're looking at today, and I think that's a really interesting prospect. And also note the question we've just had from Hadnam, which I think in some respects is covering similar ground to ourselves, and seeking to improve the transport options available to rural residents. I would like to encourage the extension of the scooter trial. I think we are literally just the next village on from the border of the existing trial, and we have a good, suitable cycle path essentially connecting us to the edge of the scooter trial in Histon, and I think it would offer significant benefits. So I would ask that we do get a decent shake at the next round of extensions, and I would be interested to see how that goes. But finally, I don't think you mentioned the Sutton bus service, which had been proposed to run through Wilburton, Hadnam, and onto Oakington Busway, and I think beyond as well. And I was wondering if there might be a review of that service, and I think that would be again of significant benefit to both Cottenham and some of the other isolated villages nearby.
Thank you. I believe that I'm allowed to ask our one of our officers to answer. So Andrew, who's our Director of Public Transport, will be able to just give you a bit more information on that. So Andrew, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Jones, I know we've been engaged on email in terms of some of the Section 106 potentials there for Cottenham as well, which I know we've got a meeting coming up on, which we can link some of this stuff into potentially at officer level as well. I think you're referring to what will be formerly known as the Tiger 12, which will be the Sutton to Long Stanton park and ride service, which was identified in the preset proposals. That has now gone out to tender, and we're just working through the next steps on that. But happy to pick up some of the detail about the design of that route in that meeting as well that we have upcoming, if that's okay.
No, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And we have noted your interest in becoming part of any further e-scooter extensions. So thank you for raising that. Now we go on to question 3, which is from Annabelle Sykes, who is a resident. Annabelle, again, can we just check we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Do go ahead.
Good. Well, my answer to the chair of Cottenham Parish Council would be that he should back a northern approach for East West Rail with a station with good links to the guided busway, and then his residents can be able to get onto the train. So my question, at the South Cambridgeshire Cabinet meeting on the 14th of January, Councillor Tumi Hawkins said, unfortunately, East West Rail, in my view, has been frugal with the truth. She went on to say, there's a big concern that the idea of a route that goes and connects with Bar Hill and Northstowe and then comes down through Cambridge North has not been seriously considered, was not properly considered, and this has been made worse, especially with the in-person events where East West Rail staff have admitted to community members that that route will be better, will be cheaper, but they cannot consider it now because of all the work that they have done on the southern approach. I'd also add that it will be far better for freight because it doesn't send diesel freight through urban South and East Cambridge, including past one of the country's leading heart and lung hospitals. I say diesel advisedly because discontinuous electrification doesn't work for freight. The CPCA draft response implicitly endorses EWRCO's proposed southern approach. Please will the CPCA amend it to respond to significant concerns from residents that EWR has chosen the wrong route?
Thank you, Annabelle. And thank you for raising these concerns regarding the East West Rail route and its implications for both passenger and freight transport. The combined authority does recognise the need for very careful consideration of all perspectives to ensure the best outcome for the region. And we'll hear more about this later in the meeting, and I hope you'll be able to stay for that discussion and follow that along online. But we have liaised with constituent authorities and members of a variety of combined authority committees to ensure that we have as much representation from our whole combined authority area as possible in the response that we are giving. The combined authority continues to reiterate to the East West Rail Company the need to acknowledge and action the feedback received through this consultation on both the southern approach and the more widespread concerns highlighted by local communities, stakeholders and elected representatives. It's important to emphasise that the combined authority's response is intended to be geographically agnostic in relation to the approach to Cambridge. It focuses on achieving the best outcome for the region without favouring any specific alignment. In fact, I understand that we're only able to comment in our formal response on the route as put out for consultation at this point. But I will ask officers to correct me if I've got that wrong. So our response does recognise the southern route allows increased access to key economic hubs such as Cambridge South and the life science sector, but this does not preclude the need to address broader concerns, some of those you've outlined in your question. One of those, of course, includes the concern about diesel, and I want to reassure you that we are extremely clear in the response that we want to see full electrification from day one. As the scheme continues to be developed, the combined authority will continue to ensure that further clarification on the rationale behind the southern approach is made available to local communities, stakeholders and members and is fully scrutinised. It's important that East West Rail have robust engagement with affected communities and stakeholders, ensuring their concerns are genuinely considered in final route decisions. Thank you. And you do have a follow-up.
Okay, well, I think there are two parts to that follow-up. One is really a comment. You've said that your response is supposed to be route agnostic, but you've suggested stations in Comberton and Harston. So that at least implicitly endorses the southern approach, I would suggest. As regards in particular a station in Comberton, I wonder whether anyone has asked the Barbastell Bats how they feel about that. My follow-up question, East West Rail says it'll enable 4 freight trains per day on completion through Cambridge, but anything beyond that requires, among other things, the unsuitable Newmarket line to be upgraded. This will be very costly and more costly for freight than simply for passengers. The Network Rail strategic statement on the East-West Mainline partnership is very clear about that. It will also be appalling for the residents who live near the line through both construction and operation. And I'm aware that they feel very unrepresented. There's a sort of tiny bit of SCDC residents which is affected, and also an area of East Cambs that is kind of around Newmarket, but isn't Newmarket. So I would ask, why is the CPCA supporting freight along the Newmarket line? Again, I think it's very hard to say your response is agnostic as regards approach when you are effectively supporting elements of it which are baked in by the southern approach and are difficult to achieve with the Newmarket line. Is you wouldn't go that way with freight on a if there was a northern approach.
Thank you, Annabelle. So I've made a lot of notes of that. I think probably because you raise a lot of points that I think will come up in the debate that we have. So what I'm going to suggest is that rather than me trying to kind of summarise all that now, please do stay for the debate. You won't be able to contribute to that debate, but you will be able to hear what people have to say. And hopefully that will give more detail on some of those things. And if it doesn't, please feel free to get back in touch with us afterwards. Very happy to get officers to provide any more technical detail on that. But thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. I really mean that. It is great to have people here, both in person and online, to ask their questions themselves and to ask a follow-up. It really enhances the democratic process. So thank you. So that is the end of our public questions. And we are now moving on to item 5, which is the Combined Authority Forward Plan. Are there any questions or comments on this forward plan, or can we take this as noted? Okay, I see no questions or comments, so we will move forward and we will move on to item 6. Item 6 is the Director's Highlights Report, and Judith Barker, who is Executive Director for Place and Connectivity, will introduce the report when she's put her mic back. I can lend you this one if you want. You got it, right, over to you.
Is that on? Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Apologies for nearly breaking the technology this Friday morning. So good morning, everyone. We have got, as you will have seen, a very extensive and wide-ranging director's report. So do bear with me as I draw out some key elements for the committee. And obviously, I'm accompanied by a number of members of the team who can help with the detailed questions. So we were obviously very pleased to welcome the opening of the Broad Street in March. And I think that culminates a lot of work that's been taking place across Fenland District Council and with the members of Fenland District Council who've been working very hard to achieve those outcomes and improve that town centre, both in terms of connectivity and footfall. And you can see the pictures of that event, as well as the further progress that's intended that we discussed in the summer. Now, underpinning that important delivery work is obviously the strategies that we have in place. You'll be aware that the local transport and connectivity plan was obviously approved in November 2023. And underneath that, there's a raft of both local or geographical areas as well as thematic areas. And you can see those listed. I do just need to confirm that in terms of the rail strategy, it's the scope that is going to be brought back to this committee in the summer, not the full strategy. So yes, there's a lot of work going on and colleagues are working very hard to bring forward those areas. And obviously one of the others that are mentioned there is the micro-mobility strategy, which links very well with the point that was made from our colleague that came in Cottenham. A very important local strategy, if I can call it local, is the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy. And we're working with a raft of colleagues at both officer level and member level to ensure that is progressed to fit with the importance of that document for their emerging local plan. Another aspect of that work is the engagement, which is obviously vitally important, not only for the people and residents and businesses of the Greater Cambridge area, but also of a much wider area, because clearly Greater Cambridge impacts across the region. And we will be bringing forward detailed plans for that engagement in due course, in order to ensure that we can bring forward a strategy that fits with the local plan timetable. We're also continuing to work closely in order to bring a paper at the one of the summer or spring-summer meetings of this group, and the members group for that Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy is indeed chaired by the chair of this committee. We've noted a number of consultations that we've been participating in, and indeed the bus one at the end of page 17 was submitted a week ago, but there's a raft of activity that's going on by government at the moment that we are trying to ensure that the voice of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is heard, and that will include the Integrated National Transport Strategy Events programme, and we will be attending one on the 11th of March to again make sure that our voice is listened to within central government to get a prominence to our key priorities. You will see the update that's been provided on Soham Station, and obviously we can answer more questions on that and some of the other technical details around that project that we're obviously looking at much more at that and a monitoring and evaluation position. And indeed, later on this agenda, we've got more work that's going on monitoring and evaluation. You'll see updates on Vision Zero and active travel, as well as the e-scooter expansion. There's a lot of work going on around connectivity in the north of the area. You'll note that we remain a member of the A47 Alliance and are continuing to seek a package of improvements between Peterborough and Wisbech on that route, as well as working with our colleagues across Norfolk and the wider area. That work in the north of the area includes the update on the Whittlesea Relief Road, as well as a number of rail projects, which we've been working with both members and officers to advance. And I'm pleased to say that we had a meeting on the 13th of January with officers to update on all of the projects that we're working on with Fenland District Council to particularly address issues of rurality, which pose particular problems for connectivity in that area. You'll see the update on the A16, and particularly that the work is complete, but until the funding certainty is established, we can't advance further. I'm pleased to be able to say that David Mitchell from the County Council is joining us if there's any questions on the A141 consultation, which I know is of a particularly important scheme to Huntingdon and Huntingdonshire and the surrounding area. And there's been a great deal of participation in that consultation. And finally, in the director's report, there's been a huge amount of work going on in terms of buses, which my colleague Andrew Highfield has been leading. So yes, we have got a very significant paper at this meeting in terms of bus reform, but there is also a huge amount of work that's going on to improve the network and develop the network within the existing status of the network. You will note that the levels of participation on the Tiger Pass, the launch of Tiger on Demand, which was a phased process with West Huntingdonshire going live on the 30th of November, and then Fenland, East Cambs and South Cambs going live on the 11th of January. And we'll be bringing a report of that progress to this meeting in March. I also wanted just to draw out the decisions that have been reported via board, particularly the agreement of the board to extend the local fare cap, which was agreed for the first 3 months of this year at £2, and then extending that to June the 30th with a £2.50 fare cap in place until December. We obviously have also made good progress in terms of the preset routes, but there have been procurement issues, which I have reported at this committee before, which culminated in us needing to restart the procurement of 7 of the routes. And although clearly that's been of great disappointment to this committee and to the board, I'm pleased to say that that re-procurement has now begun. And so that we will be looking that those routes come online in May or June in order to advance that. So there's a huge amount of work going on. There will be more updates, including the network map, which will be brought in March. But at that point, I will pause for questions across that wide-ranging report, Chair.
Thank you. And I know I say this every time, but it's important to say every time, there's a huge amount of work that is reflected in that report. And I think it's great that we have this because it shows the things that are happening that do not need to come as a formal paper by themselves, but nonetheless are going ahead. And this is only a scraping the surface of the work that our transport team are doing on a daily basis. So thank you very much. Do we have any comments or questions on this item? Okay, so we have Councillor Ellis, we have Councillor Sharp. I'll take you for now. If anyone else wants to speak, just indicate. Is that an indication there, Councillor Shaler? Okay, right, we'll start with that. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to go to the local authority activity updates. Item 4.3, local electric vehicle infrastructure update, LEVI, which is more commonly known as. Do we have any further updates? The submission bid was put in on the 15th of November. Do you have any feedback you can give us, or any sort of time scales about when we're here about if the bid is successful and any ongoing developments? I mean, this is a very important piece of work, especially in the urban areas of Peterborough, Cambridge, and the other towns around the combined area, where people can't just plug in from their garage. They don't have space. They don't have a driveway. So it's very important for this to happen as well if we're going to progress things. So if you can give us an update, that'd be great.
Okay, Councillor Sharp. And could I just say, Emma, do you want to come up to be able to answer on that one? Councillor Sharp, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got comments and questions on 6 items here, so shall I?
Run through the lot, and if they're quite long, I might then defer Councillor Shayler's question to the next round. So just go through them.
I'll try and keep it brief. The first one, and I've lost my page now, but I'll try. Is, and again, I've raised this before, the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy. I don't think. And we've certainly had since the 16th of December, when the government issued the potential of the change of unitary authorities, the council change. What Greater Cambridge, I think, is being classed as Cambridge and South Cambs. East Cambridgeshire is very much part of that, yet is not included. We have no seat at the table. So I would ask again, I understand from what Judith has said that obviously the chair of this is the chair of that member working group, but I'd certainly like to see what they're actually discussing, and who the membership is. The second item is, and I suppose following on from the public question, I suppose I should declare an interest, not pecuniary, in that Dullingham Station is in my division. So part of the Cambridge to Ipswich line actually runs through there, and I live right next door to Newmarket. My house is actually in Cambridge. The road outside that runs past is in Suffolk. That's how close I am to the border, and it's bizarre, as we know, the border around there. So the second one is on the rail investment pipeline. I'd be interested. I don't know if we're able to see what it says on there, that we've got to put responses back to the Transport Select Committee by the 7th of February. I'd certainly be interested. I don't know if a briefing is going to come to members, but that would be useful. The third item is around, and I know I've certainly mentioned this at County Council, and I think I've mentioned it here, around the Grafham to Brampton work, which has reared its head in that report. There needs to be a lot more consultation on this. I've spoken to the county member for that division this morning, and he's not aware of anything going forward. And I know he's been liaising with county officers on this. So certainly we don't want, from a personal point of view and from his point of view, we don't want something that's not got the residents on side. The fourth point, and apologies for this, on the e-scooter trial, it mentions the success of it. I'm not against e-scooters. And this is more a government issue, I think, to be fair, both past and present, in terms of the safety, the licensing, and everything else on it. Because we've had, fortunately not severe, but accidents around this area, but I believe in other parts of the country there's been more. So I'm more concerned about the safety issue of e-scooters, not the actual e-scooters themselves. Fifth is around bus procurement. I mean, Judith and I have had a few emails on this, and very frustrated that, and I understand it's commercially sensitive, the information, but I would have preferred, even if it's obviously had to be confidential briefing, but I'm literally been, since the last TIC meet or previous TIC meeting on the 4th of November, I've had residents asking me what's happening, and I've not been able to tell them anything. So I find that from a communication point of view, very, very frustrating. And I understand the issues that you may have with not being able to divulge that, but perhaps we should look at how we could do that. And And I know ONS have met on early in the week and are looking at going a dive in behind that, because I'm certainly aware that the East Cambs DRT, there's not been much communication from what I understand to the residents and to parish council. So I'm not sure how many people actually know it's actually running at the moment. And then finally, again, it's something I've raised more at county than here, is around the A141 and lack of input or lack of consultation with St Ives and other local members. But apologies for a long shopping list, Chair.
Okay, definitely, Councillor Shayler, I'm taking you in the next tranche, if you don't mind. Judith has been scribbling away brilliantly there, so we might have to divide this up between different officers. So first of all, in terms of Councillor Ellis's question, which seems quite a while ago now, on Levi, Emma, could you answer that one, please?
Yeah, so we've submitted the business case and we're still awaiting feedback, but that doesn't mean we're sort of just sat waiting and working in collaboration with CCC and PCC. We're also working with districts on the procurement and commercial documents. And I think the main thing we're focusing on at the moment is making it equitable for the combined authority area. So we're really focusing on how we can make the most of the 5.4 million to get that private investment as well, to make sure that all areas of the combined authority are served with these charges. We're also working on communication plans and engagement plans on how we can communicate that with everybody, including the public, to get support on what we want to do. As and when we get more feedback, we will be bringing to TIC more detailed information and when the work on how to get the most equitable solution as well. We're looking spring, summer, we should have feedback and have a sort of more definitive plan in place where we can give feedback to everybody.
Thank you. So that's that one. Now, do you want to lead off?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sharp. And what I'll try to do is to keep to the order in which the points were raised, so that helps us navigate through the variety of issues that you've raised this morning. So the first point was the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy. And we've had a couple of member steering groups, which has been focused on the Greater Cambridge area, and the scope of the, just for clarity, the scope of the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy is the same as the Greater Cambridge local plan. So it is Cambridge City and South Cambs, but it is absolutely acknowledged by all that the impact of that strategy is clearly much broader, because clearly Cambridge is a regional centre. So those initial two meetings have really had a focus on three things really. One is the kind of programme plan for advancing the strategy. The second is an engagement plan of how the discussions are going to go on more widely. So this group is a kind of beginning group to get it up and running. And the third aspect is the evidence development. So it's really been a very early stages in order to be able to bring some further proposals through this committee, because it is the Transport and Infrastructure Committee that oversees both the delivery of the local transport plan and indeed any sub-regional and thematic strategies that sit underneath it. So if any other area has a local transport plan, and I know Peterborough City are looking at a city centre transport strategy, so those would also come through here for TIC to consider. But clearly, looking back at the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy, we will be having a paper in March, which will pick up on those three areas that I've just mentioned: the programme plan, the engagement, and the evidence base and the work that's going on in those three areas. And so I think at that point, there can clearly be engagement, and we will need to kick off post-mayoral elections with that broader piece about looking at what that evidence says, working through that programme plan for further engagement in the details of some of the options that might be considered and emerging in order to create that strategy. So it absolutely will be the case that it absolutely is the case that that draft engagement plan that we've been looking at does include engagement with wider authorities, both within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and beyond. So that's yeah, please do.
Just want to come in on that as chair of that member working group, Councillor Sharp. I think it's just important to clarify that it's in a slightly strange position, isn't it, the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy? So this is something that is very much, as Judith said, it's to go along alongside that Greater Cambridge local plan. It's to inform and support those works, and it's a child document of the LTCP. So clearly, in terms of that working group, that focus needs to be on that set of constituent authorities, in the same way as East Cambs would be able to have its own transport strategy alongside its own local plan should it wish to do so. However, I want to reassure you that I absolutely recognise that a lot of people who do not live in the Greater Cambridge area nonetheless work or spend leisure time in that area, and it's really important, therefore, that we are engaging properly and effectively with people outside of that area. So I just wanted to reinforce what Judith was saying. You know, there will be discussions that we need to have that are very specifically around those, in effect, planning authorities. But that discussion will need to take account of the fact that the Greater Cambridge area is used by an awful lot more than just people who live in that specific area. So I want to reassure you of that. Anyway, Judith, back to you.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, I'm going to invite Tim Bellamy to speak about the Transport Select Committee inquiry on rail investment and also on the e-scooter point.
Thank you. So on the Transport Select Committee rail investment, so a draft is being prepared, but I will circulate that to TIC members in advance of submitting that to Transport Select Committee. Just to give everyone a flavour about some of the things that will be included in there will be Elio capacity, the Hawley junctions, obviously the link to that, Dullingham Loop as well, etc. So there's a number of issues within that, along with looking at our need for additional stations across the patch as well. So there'll be a number of elements within that, both interconnectivity and interchanges, but also on some of those capacity issues as well. And then on the e-scooter element, there is also some good news around where we are. So we've got the 20% in addition to the actual e-scooter element of it, with the accident rate, we've got 22% growth year on year, and that is 342,000 car trips being replaced. Also, we've in liaison with Voi, and they've outlined that actually the accident rate in our Pacific trial in Cambridge is getting significantly better, and a decline year on year. And this is to do with online training, and also the users need to have a license, driver's license to actually use it, and must be over 18. And the police, we've been engaging with them regularly on the Voi scooter, and they're positive around our trial in particular with regard to pilot. But any additional information, we can provide that myself or Anna Graham.
Okay, so Nick's asking to come in, Chair.
I'll put you on the list. Cool. Carry on.
Thank you. So regarding, if I can go back to the active travel point that you made, particularly regarding Grafham to Brampton, Cambridgeshire County Council are absolutely engaged with that project. So perhaps that's something we can talk about outside of the meeting, if that would be helpful. Very happy to follow up with you on that. The next point was going into the bus procurement. And as you quite rightly have identified, we have exchanged a number of emails, and the frustration of officers and members is very much appreciated. We did provide an update on the 4th of November, which was to say that there were ongoing legal discussions regarding during the procurement. That situation was ongoing and was concluded early in January, and there was a briefing provided to the leaders' strategy meeting at the beginning of January in order to update the situation, the legal advice, and what was proposed. And then from there, we were able to look at reprocuring. And that, as what I am able to confirm, has commenced this week. So we all recognise that isn't the position that we wanted, but unfortunately, it was the case that an operator was not able to deliver within the terms that they set out in their tender and then withdrew from that. So we've had to reprocure, and we will reprocure, and we will get those services up and running. You also mentioned the demand responsive travel. There were also issues in the procurement of that, which meant the timing of that didn't go ahead quite as we'd intended. And that had an impact on the communications plan. And I have got Ed Coleman and Andrew Highfield, who I'm sure can provide more details on that. But what we found ourselves in a position is, unfortunately, not able to launch it in December, needing to launch it in January, and moving from a position very early in the year to launch it as quickly as possible with a communications plan in place, working as quickly as we could to get that up and running to offer those services in Fenland, East Cambs and South Cambs, as well as Huntingdonshire. So we're working at pace to roll that out. Obviously, updates were provided in the members update in December, so people can access the app and access the telephone numbers and all the ways to book the service. And we're very much looking forward to working with all of you to get your feedback so we can continue to develop and improve the service and improve the communications. And actually, we've been very pleased to work with a number of members across the area who've been helping us roll some of that out as understanding and interest in demand responsive travel increases. But perhaps I could just ask Ed or Andrew to come in with some further details on the communications.
Ed, do you want to come in on that?
Oh, there we go. So yeah, as Judith explained, the timetable for comms and engagement, certainly in the pre-launch phase, was shrunk quite considerably. But ultimately, what we've got is a program of engagement where we're trying to balance both online and offline, particularly given the nature of where the service is operating and the need to ensure that it's accessible for all communities. We have engaged with members through the members newsletter and through your own constituent authorities. So they were all shared with basically a launch pack that had a suite of material in it. There was the option for any council, any community organisation, so be it parish or town council, be it elected members in that leadership role in the place, or be it any other community groups, to request a suite of material. That could be digital assets, it could be physical posters to promote the service in those localities as well. We're also running a series of sessions through libraries and community hubs over the coming weeks to raise awareness of the service and also answer any questions that potential users might have. So those drop-in sessions are currently being arranged based on some of the local insight that we've had through the planning process with your respective authorities. There's also then the programme of traditional media, so flyers, posters, postcards are being distributed locally, but very keen to build as much local insight from members into that process as possible. So if there are specific locations in your communities that would benefit, very happy to have a conversation at the end. We can ship that material out directly to them, and also very happy to come and attend any forums or meetings that exist where it would be useful to give an overview of the service and how it can be booked.
And Mayor Dr. Nick, I know you'd like to come in on this as well.
It's just a quick point. I have to congratulate my comms team on their politeness of that response. Genuinely, Alan, I could not fault the comms team in terms of what they've done in regards to the Tiger on Demand. It's a new service. In trying to explain it and how it works is quite intricate, but the way they've gone about it in terms of engaging with you all but more importantly through traditional methods, through written media and social media. I would turn it around, Alan. I'm absolutely, look, I've had a quick look. You know, you work for East Cambridgeshire, yeah? Only on 3 occasions has East Cambridgeshire posted on Facebook about it. These lot are posting about it every day. So, you know, it works both ways. And I would say perhaps particularly where the Fenland as well, South Cambridgeshire, I do know, and it's not for me to kind of intervene too much between officers of our different organisation. Communications between our organisations works both way. And I would say, look, why don't you also have a chat with East Cambridgeshire? Because I know I'm grateful for their support. I've seen the tweet. I follow your organisation, follow all of your organisations, comms team, and I see the ones that are most proactive in where we are able to share and with stuff that's coming out of your organisations, and it works both ways. So I think Ed gave a very comprehensive answer as to how he dealt and the team dealt with the launch of the Tiger on Demand. And I would just say any help, either on an individual representative basis, for those who've got Twitter feeds, for those who've got Facebook feeds, and there are officers and sort of councillors in your organisation that have been supportive, but I think there's always room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith, I think you still had one
We do.
item to cover off
Yes.
there.
Yes. Sorry. I think the 6th item was the A141 consultation, and obviously within the paper, and I've lost the page now, but I did have it 10 seconds ago. Oh, here we go. Obviously there was an extensive consultation that ran up till the 27th of November, and obviously the paper does set out the wide-ranging responses on that. And perhaps I could just ask, I think we can see the details there. So there has been wide engagement. Perhaps I could just ask colleague David Mitchell to ask him when the report will be received on those consultation responses. Thank you.
To bring the paper back in full, setting out the response from the public. Just to add one final point of detail, contacted in advance of the 16th of October launch of the consultation, explaining what was going out into the public and how that was going to be managed, etc., and all the events that were held. So I'm fairly certain that every single member had a chance to see the details that were being put out to the public.
Right, so I think we've covered off all those. In the interest of time, Councillor Sharp, if there are bits that haven't been covered off, if you were able to get in touch, unless it's very, very quick by email for that to be covered off, I think that would be really helpful.
Very quickly, thank you for all of that. Just 2 points. The rail investment thing, and it was partly about the public question we had earlier. I think the Ely area enhancement thing, that will get so much freight up to the Midlands and North. That really is a massively crucial issue for this county. And the second thing, I take Nick's comments around communications, East Cams. I will certainly go back and see what they've done, and I take it in the spirit it was meant. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and just to reassure you, I think on that, the work on lobbying at every possible place we can lobby for the Ely enhancement is something I know the Mayor is working really hard on, and I know that all of our local MPs are as well. So that work continues. It hasn't been forgotten at all. Now, I've got 3 more people to speak. I am saying this genuinely. I love this committee because you've got so many questions and it is brilliant. And that is what we should be doing. The scrutiny is really important. I would also remind the committee that it is now 11:10 and we're still on the director's highlights report. So please be brief. And I think it might be useful to talk about how we might do some of these questions on directors' highlights, whether it might be useful to say ask for questions in advance, we can table some of those answers. Let's talk about that because it is brilliant. You've got so many questions. So I have Councillor Shaler, Councillor MacDonald, thanks, I've seen you there. Councillor Shaler first.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I will keep it as brief as possible. A lot of this actually relates to other items. So I just want to say great to see the work streams. The way that it's ramping up is really fantastic. And also the way that the combined authority is working across with partners. I've really noticed it on the county. And just to push back a bit about the Greater Cambridge Transport Study, we do have transport studies that are district-based and much more isolated, in fact, than this one. And so I really applaud the more strategic view brought to these studies by the combined authorities, in fact. So I have a quite opposite kind of view of it. I want to also applaud the extension of the fare cap on, we've had a lot of positive feedback from that. And actually the Tiger on Demand has caused quite a bit of excitement. So again, I see these things in much more positive terms, I think. I want to talk about in 4.2 SOAM Rail. It was great to see the increase in passenger numbers, but still the connectivity with buses is not there. And these, rail stations like the one in Whittlesea, like other ones, need to be hubs. And so we need to use as many links as we possibly can. And again, I won't go into this in detail because this relates to other items. The A141 lack of consultation. Oh my God, I knocked on doors and I have never found a response that was more known by the people in St. Ives and in the area. And I won't lean on David Mitchell too much to go into the details of the public consultation, the public meetings, and all of the leaflets that went out. It was a lot. So that's kind of a strange comment, I thought. Finally, on the e-scooter expansion, and mention the fact that there are more than the voice scooters, of course, all of the unregulated ones. And if we need to get proper regulation, these kinds of vehicles are clearly a part of the mix of getting people around. They're a clean way of getting people around. It has been very successful in and around Cambridge, but we do need some proper, and this is, central government to tell us what to do with all of the other similar vehicles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Dr. Nick, do you want to contribute still, or have you got your bit in now? No, okay, cross you off the list. Councillor Wakeford.
Yeah, just extremely briefly, I wasn't going to comment on this item at all because we've got enormously significant substantive items later on the agenda, and I think the highlight report is really helpful, and thanks for all the work from the officer team. Just couldn't let references to Hunt's past comment without mentioning, as the Huntingdonshire district rep, just on Councillor Sharp's points. I mean, questions around the Brampton Gratham road. I mean, ongoing. Thanks for his interest in our district and in that project. But I am slightly mystified by there's information in the on the County Council's website from the link that's included in the director's highlight report. So I'm not sure what further follow-ups required on signposting to the county authority who are leading on this, not us as the combined authority. And Councillor Bishal has made a version of the point I was going to make as well about the A141 consultation. We have nothing but gratitude for the combined authorities, comms and project colleagues and their liaison with us as the district council around enabling us to help push out the consultation engagement materials, and as the paper references, 2 events in St Ives, of which one had 300 members, which is quite a lot for something connected with local councils and local democracy in our market towns. So I'm grateful for the work on that and looking forward to the update that comes through.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford and Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a plea, I think, which you're aware of. So the last item on the agenda today is of monumental importance for my residents, and unfortunately I have a 1 o'clock hard stop. And I'd really craved indulgence or understanding for others. It's a road that carries 30,000 vehicles a day, and I'm desperate to make a comment, and it's the last one. And unfortunately, I'm travelling to the West Country, and I have a hard stop at 1 o'clock. Sorry, Chair.
Councillor MacDonald, we will keep an eye on the agenda and shift that further up if we need to do so, if we haven't got to it by that point. So thank you for raising that. Now, I don't think there were any questions in that last round. I think there were more observations. So unless I've missed something, I think I'm going to close the discussion there. It is testament to the excellent work that's being done and the importance of the work that we do as a committee, and that it takes quite a while on that report. We have some other big things to go. And the next big thing to come, and are we all happy just to keep powering on? Does anyone need a comfort break? No, good. So we are now on to item 7, which is the bus reform consultation report. So Judith Barker, Executive Director, will give a brief overview before introducing the following people who will be able to take questions from members. And that will be Andrew Highfield, Assistant Director of Public Transport Services, Richard Jeremy, Bus Reform Programme Manager, Rob Emery, Assistant Director, Finance, Ed Coleman, Head of Communications, Engagement and Public Affairs. So we've got the whole team here to be able to answer questions as needed. Judith.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate there's a lot of papers to wade through, and hopefully this brief introduction will help us both navigate those and provide a important introduction to all of your questions, which I'm sure will be wide-ranging. So this committee will obviously be aware that bus reform has been a very long-standing consideration here within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and that's recognising the issues about the buses not delivering for the residents across the region. And we recognise that since lockdown, some of those pressures have become more considerable, and officers have been asked to look at alternatives. And the alternatives to the status quo are fundamentally two options. One, an enhanced partnership, which means negotiating with our existing operators to try and provide a more coherent pattern of services, working obviously within the existing system of the private operators. And that enhanced partnership will be as good as any negotiations with those bus operators can deliver. But clearly we would have less ability to frame and develop that network. Franchising is a different model, when the public sector would be taking over the network and contracting services on long-term contracts with performance management obviously attached to those contracts, giving the combined authority the ability to frame and develop the network. So by July last year, we had a business case or assessment. You may well remember the 380 pages that we presented earlier in July with those 5 cases within it. And that was approved both through Transport and Infrastructure Committee and then by the board. And that was accompanied, as you may well remember, by that audit that was undertaken by Grant Thornton in compliance with the legislation to confirm that the data within that business case was robust, as was the analysis. And that assessment favoured the franchise model, saying that the franchise model met the strategic objectives of the organisation, and stating that it was delivering value for money and affordable. And at that point, the board agreed that we should go out to public and statutory stakeholder consultation in line with the legislation. So that consultation took place in the autumn from August to November, covering more than 14 weeks. And there were many methods of engagement, and they're set out in the paper and in the reports that accompany it. And that garnered over 1,600 responses. And our job since that closed has really been to consider those responses. And the team of people that you have before you, and many others as well, have been focused on looking at those responses and comparing those with the findings and with the assessment. So we have, obviously, you have the cover report, you have the what's called, and you can see in your papers branded as the Westco report. So that Westco report is essentially a report of all the responses and how the consultation was done. So you can see in there a great deal of detail about what statutory consultees said, what they didn't say, and as well how different focus groups were managed, the questions that were asked, and so on. Obviously, the general public responses are anonymous, but the statutory consultees are named as they were told they would be during the process. Then what you've got is the Combined Authority Response Report. So what that is considering all the responses that are set out in the Westco report. We've gone through each of those responses, grouped them into themes, and then looked at them and examined them in order to consider our response. And if you look at the report, you'll see that they're grouped under the strategic headings. So people, if you responded yourself to the questionnaire, you'll know that the questions were set out alongside your views on the strategic case, the reason for doing it, your views on the economic case, the commercial case, etc. So we've then grouped those responses under those 5 headings. We've also got an SME operators paper. That is a requirement, but it's particularly important because in this area we have 14 operators currently delivering services in this area. And obviously we need to look very carefully if we're changing the way the market operates in this space to consider the views of those small and medium-sized operators and the impact on them. And so that paper is a particularly important one. There are also a number of statutory requirement documents that we've published. But in summary, that report, that Combined Authority Response Report, has concluded and is set out in 3.12 that we are reaffirming the bus reform assessment's conclusion that CPCA proceed with the proposed franchising scheme as the preferred option for bus reform for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough region, and that is being recommended to the Mayor. So in summary, we had to look at each case and all those representations and concluded that to deliver the strategic objectives and to deliver value for money within the funding envelope, the best way forward was to recommend franchising. But we did receive many submissions, and as I've indicated, many individual responses, and all of those has been considered. Probably the biggest single areas were around affordability and around deliverability and risk. And we have addressed in the report our responses to those issues, and in particular, how the scheme is affordable, and how the team will need to grow within CPCA in order to ensure that franchising would be deliverable. We continue to explore approaches to make the financial case stronger through exploring the opportunity to seek grants or other sources of the money that aren't currently within the assessment, but could clearly make them affordable over the longer term. And we have made a number of suggestions, and I think it's particularly important that we highlight those for the committee. So we are investigating longer mobilisation periods so that contractors are able to set up to deliver. We are going to continue, if a decision was made to go ahead with franchising, we would commit to consulting and engaging the stakeholders of franchising during any implementation phase. And the power of the questions and the contributions in those 1,600 responses is absolute testament to why that is important. We will continue to work with the community transport sector and to ensure that we're considering all aspects of connectivity with key stakeholders. We will work with the Growth Hub to make sure that we can support any procurement and operators to participate in the procurement. We will include safety as a key aspect of moving forward, as has been highlighted as important in other areas. And we will continue to ensure that there is transparency in any implementation plans through this committee and through the full Combined Authority Board if proposals are moved forward. Obviously, we totally recognise as officers how complex and how significant this is for the public residents and businesses of this area, with all the papers, the areas to consider, and all of those responses. And it's therefore important that all of you get the opportunity, having read all of this, to ask the questions. And that's why I've been accompanied by my colleagues who Anna, the chair, introduced. We have also had the support from our legal team and independently from Addleshaw Goddard, because clearly compliance with the legislation has been key. So before I finish, I just wanted to highlight the recommendations on the paper. So there are 4: to note the completion of the bus reform consultation, its extent and the responses received; to note the content of the Westco consultation, so the results; to recommend to the Combined Authority Board that it approves the CPCA consultation report that's at Appendix 3. And then D, to recommend to the Mayor that he makes a franchising scheme as set out in Appendix 5. Obviously, to be clear, the next stop for this discussion will be we have an overview and scrutiny working group this afternoon and a full committee on Monday. It will then be further discussed by the board on the 6th of February. But this is a mayoral decision which would be taken following full debates and consideration of the facts at each committee. And at that point, Chair, if I can thank you and hand back for questions.
Thank you very much. And in case we forget to mention this when it comes to the vote, clearly because it is a mayoral decision, the mayor will not have a vote at this point because he is not able to predetermine himself. But we're extremely glad that the mayor is here to be able to listen to the debate that we have today. And thank you very much for coming to that. So I'm going to open this out. Your mic is on, by the way. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to open this out. So I'll take yourself first, perhaps, Mayor, just if you wanted to affirm that. And then I want to take other questions and comments as needed. So many.
Yeah, it goes without saying that the whole process has been incredibly long and has taken an awful lot of effort to get to where we are. It has always been the case that I have to demonstrate no predetermination. Obviously, the fact that I'm here today and will be with the board following your recommendation is all about that listening process. I want to say thank you for everybody for all the hard work and for the people who've already at a local level, individuals and groups who've already submitted into this process. I think long term, it is going to be so important that we get this right for the whole of our populations across Cambridge and Peterborough. So thank you. I'm looking forward to the debate.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, who do I have that wishes to speak on this? So we have Councillor Shaler, Councillor Ellis. We'll start, Councillor Seaton. We'll start with you and I'll pick up others as I go along. Councillor Shaler, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And didn't realise I'd be going first. We support franchising as laid out in the consultation response. There's obviously a really, really good majority, 63% support. It already sounds like a lot, but when you look at it's only 12% opposed, the picture is extremely clear. Of course, we look forward to the further discussions on the technical details, on responsibilities and assets and all that sort of stuff. This is a massive report. It's taken a long time, as the Mayor said, to get to where we are now. We look forward to further alignment on home to school transport, for instance, existing busways, park and ride hubs, that sort of thing, as well as the proposals being brought forward by the Greater Cambridge Partnership. But really, what I want to say is thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Combined Authority. This is a historic achievement, and really, it is a step towards reconnecting our rural communities and giving freedoms of movement away from car dependency and isolation. So really what we need to get from this is proper connectivity, including buses to train stations. I feel like a broken record. Often these are currently cut off. We know the economic benefits. What is it? More than £4 return for every £1 that is spent. This is a no-brainer. But connectivity is not only about economies. It's about communities, health, mental health. Chair, facts matter. outcomes matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaler. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off with an apology. I forgot to introduce myself when I first spoke. So it's Councillor Angus Ellis, Peterborough City Council Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. I really do welcome this report, and I really do welcome the fact that we are discussing this and the opportunity to make a change after years of the deregulation. The one thing you can see from the consultation, it's not just the general consultation, it's from the focus groups, it's also from the organisations, that the clear majority is in favour of franchising. There is a lot more detail which will need to be going into. For example, the one thing which I want to highlight is the bus depots, and I've been a bit parochial here. The Peterborough bus depot, which is just around the corner from my actual ward where I'm a councillor. There's a big need for that to move, because at the moment it's in a very busy shopping street, and it really needs to be moved somewhere else where also they'll be able to start electric charging, because at the moment they don't have that capacity, and that is very important to be able to do that. So I really want that to be able to happen. I also got a question, and there is I think there's a bit of a myth out there that it's totally just about the funding is just around the precept. So I'd just like to ask you for clarification, what other funding streams there are available for this as well? And as I say, I do wholeheartedly, and I'm really pleased that we're actually in this position, and I'm glad that the Mayor has brought this forward, so that for everybody, we can offer services that the commercial services aren't able to offer themselves because of the nature of their businesses and the way they are run and the way they have to be run. So it's needs over profit, which is what we need. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Seaton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring back to what Councillor Shaler said, I think I do believe connectivity is the major player for me, and in this particular development. And like a lot of rural areas, of course, it's the connectivity which is the problem. And my concerns are with whichever proposal was accepted, whether it's franchising or the alternative. What difference is that going to make to the real rural areas? Because we don't have a hub, for argument's sake, in Wisbech. There's no railway station, although that's something we're trying to work on to get the rail line replaced or put back into service. But it's where is the benefit for the rural areas who will be paying the precept, will be paying has already been said, the precept. What is their benefit, and what is franchising going to give them? That's my concern and question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point? Councillor MacDonald, let's take you as well at this point.
No, it's just 2 points to follow up very quickly. First of all, I do agree with the comments that were made at the start by Councillor Shaler and others. So, this is an opportunity for step change. This is not just small incremental improvements. Going back to the question that Chris raised about rural connectivity, I know that's very much on the radar of all of you, and all the officers have done the report, but that is the proof of the pudding, etc., in terms of the final implementation of it. So we in South Cambridgeshire, fully support the work that's been done, and all credit to those who've done this work. But please keep this rural connectivity in mind, because especially in those areas, as Chris mentioned, where there isn't a rail connection, then the whole principle of franchising, having control of that bus network is, increasingly important. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if it might be a good point to come back to officers to give a technical response to some of those. Judith.
Thank you. If firstly I could just ask my colleague Rob Emery just to speak about the point that Councillor Ellis made about options around the preset rate. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a table, I'm afraid I couldn't find it in a few minutes while I was looking, in the business case, which sets out all the funding options that were considered. And as part of that, and as part of the business case, we had to focus on funding options that were within the combined authorities' control. So what you saw in the business case was that the funding was shown as coming from mayoral precept and from the transport levy as the two things the combined authority can directly control. But within that business case, it does talk about the other options that are less certain, less in our control, but will have a real impact on what the cost to the local taxpayer might be in future. An example of that would be the bus service improvement plan grant that was announced in, I think, November or December last year. Obviously, that wasn't factored into our case because we didn't know about it. And we would obviously hope and continue to lobby that further funding should be made available for local bus services. So there's grant from central government, there's capital funding within both the combined authorities, capital programme and other local partners. If that were reallocated away from current priorities towards, say, the bus depot costs, that would reduce borrowing and therefore the amount of money in the case that's required to support that borrowing. There's also other wider options that were considered not plausible in the short term in the business case because they'd require new laws, new taxes, or redistribution of taxes. So, for example, local retention of business rates, of VAT, of income tax, all things that we don't currently have, but could be discussed when we're talking about a franchise system in the medium to long term.
Thank you. So, Rob, just to so we as a committee are really clear, what you're saying is the reason that the precept was modelled in the report is because we were required to demonstrate that we could do this based entirely on things we have a direct control over, but that does not commit us to using things like the precept to fund this. There would be there are a lot of other means of funding that we would be able to use.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you. I think that's a really helpful clarification for us on the committee. Judith.
Thank you. And if I could ask Andrew Highfield to speak to the point raised about the depot and also that significant point made across the floor about rural connectivity, and perhaps also involve Ed Coleman in terms of the importance of that for our ongoing engagement and consultation.
Thank you, Judith. So yeah, on the bus depot in Peterborough question, obviously the depot strategy that was set out in the assessment considers the facilitation of a depot in the Peterborough area and in the Cambridge area. And the main reason for that strategy really is to reduce barriers to entry for larger operators who don't currently operate in the region, who might be attracted to the region, to encourage that competition and value for money in any potential franchising scheme. So officers have been doing some initial work and feasibility work with Peterborough officers around potential for depots in the area, and obviously through any implementation planning post-decision, that would continue. It's probably important to note that that main depot package in the assessment is mainly linked to franchising, not an enhanced partnership, but the feasibility work with officers at Peterborough will continue to identify locations and how that could work in that planning. On the rural connectivity point, it has been considered and sort of fed back in the response report in a few locations, which I can sort of point out post-meeting as well. I think the main thing that we've reflected in the response report is that we are potentially a unique geography compared to some other areas that have implemented franchising already. They're not in comparison to other areas across the world that have done franchising. We're obviously keen to learn from those benchmarks and how they do it. I think the ability in terms of franchising, in terms of rural connectivity that's been outlined in the report, is particularly around that ability to control and influence the whole network as a whole, rather than looking at things piecemeal in the current model perhaps, and also reflecting that realistically most rural services already receive some level of subsidy or contribution from the public sector because the majority aren't profitable anyway for commercial services. So that allows, in a franchising scenario, for example, that's covered in the report, that cross-subsidy from profitable services that could be used to invest further in rural connectivity. And the final point probably on that in the assessment and the model, obviously the model approach to investment in the network looks at a 15% average increase in mileage across the whole region. And that's been split into different categories for the purposes of the model. But we appreciate in any implementation planning, there needs to be further engagement with residents across the region about what that network for the future looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then picking up the, thank you, Chair. So picking up the points about, I think, the focus groups, the ongoing engagement and rural connectivity. The advantage of doing a consultation of this scale and size was it allowed us to do things that we may not normally have resources or capacity to do. And the focus groups were really useful in terms of giving us specific feedback on the proposals, but also the wider network. And one of the things that was absolutely clear, and I think we reflect it in the Westco report, one of the areas where there was most agreement was that any proposals, be it the proposed franchising scheme or an alternative, would benefit from greater ongoing consultation with both the public and stakeholders. So that's absolutely something that's come out of the process that we're taking away and thinking about how we can build in to whatever the next steps and the way forward could be. The rural connectivity points came out loud and clear in those focus groups as well. So actually this process has been really useful, yes, for giving us, for the exam question ultimately, and for satisfying the legislation and the requirement to consult. But actually in terms of the combined authorities' wider programme of engagement this year, thinking about the shared ambition development, thinking about how we use the output, the outcome from that alongside those focus groups, we've got some really powerful insight that we haven't had before in terms of shaping that future engagement and playing some of that collective insight back. So I think it's just a reflection that the consultation's been really useful in terms of giving us that insight on the long and short form questionnaires, but it's also given us a much broader and deep and meaningful understanding of some of those rural connectivity issues.
Thanks, Ed. That's really helpful. Right, so we now have Rebecca. Anyone else at this point? Councillor Sharp, Councillor Wakeford. I think we have a full house. Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca Stevens from the Business Board. I wanted to commend the volume and quality of work that has gone into this, and having felt myself quite hard done by spending every evening in the last week reading through the papers. It doesn't compare to the amount of work that's gone in. And really that was one of my comments. I think there is a vast array of really incredible intelligence that we have gathered here. And quite often a consultation is done and 2 weeks later the decision is made and the consultation is forgotten. And I think it's really important that post the decision on the 6th, we continue to use this intelligence and this information, because all the comments, all the risks, all the concerns, many of which I hadn't necessarily thought of myself, but have been laid out there. And it's really important that we use those moving forward. And I think the point made by Ed actually was really spot on, which was around that ongoing consultation and communication, because whatever happens, it won't be the answer. It won't fix everything, and it won't be magically wonderful straight away. So I think there's a lot of hard work to do here, and I think we have a really great pool of information and intelligence to lean on. So just my pleas to use that well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to officers for the report. It's, as Rebecca says, it's trying to read it. It must be hard work. So those who've pulled it together, it must be even harder than the time that went into it. Obviously, yes, and I'll pick up Councillor Shayla's point a bit. If we're going to get people out of cars, we've got to offer them a reliable, affordable bus service or rail or whatever it is, public transport service is probably a better phrase. So my comments really, and it's more, is around, and I'm looking at a table, I think 7.4242. My questions are around the finance, because going back to what I've just said, we're not going to get people out of cars overnight. We're not going to suddenly say we're going to start franchising tomorrow, so everybody's going to stop using the car and they're going to use the bus or whatever it is. That's going to take time over a number of years, maybe. So my question really is, how robust is the financial model in terms of that take up going forward? And is the initial model based purely on the current level of service, so we can then build on it, which is probably easier? Because at times we're going to have to invest, I suppose, to taking the point of getting people out of the car, better park and ride systems so people can, I know we're looking at the one east of Cambridge, moving that. It's really and so I thank the work that's been, thanks for the work that's been done on this. It's really, my question is, what risk have we got in this that, and presumably that will be done by borrowing, or, because I know, sorry, I forgot, I know you mentioned some of borrowing within it, and obviously within the paper there is borrowing for the capital infrastructure, yeah. So thank you. I've rambled on a bit there, but that's my gist of my question really, is the...
Thank you. I think I'm going to pause at this point to get some responses, because I think that's a really important question. I wonder, Judith, whilst you're kind of speaking to us about that kind of financial capacity, or Robbie's, whoever's answering that one, maybe just about that kind of broader capacity for us to be able to deliver this, bearing in mind, of course, the point that Rebecca is making, that a franchise system doesn't happen straight away, in terms of it takes a long time for that to be put in place. So, Rob, Judith, you're picking up first.
Yes, thank you. And I certainly will look to Rob to talk through the details of the financial model. But I think there's a couple of points there that would be helpful to clarify before and discuss before I hand over to Rob. The first is just to clarify the timeline, which was kind of implicit in Councillor Sharp's question. So if a decision to franchise was made this winter, in the early part of 2025, then the timeline that we were, that we've got in the assessment and are looking at and we're sharing at the consultation meetings, is that the first services wouldn't be going live until towards the end of 2027. And that is in line with the experience of, for instance, Greater Manchester, who made a decision in 2021 and went early 2021 and went live with services for the first time in September 2023 on a phased basis of 3 packages. So there is a huge amount of detailed implementation work that will need to follow. So that's just in terms of the timeline. Now, obviously, we know the assessment timeline is based on a 30-year timeline to 2054, if any of us can quite imagine that. But that is the job of the business case, is to test the financial viability over that period. And Rob will speak about that. But we've also touched on items around issues around capacity. And as I highlighted in my introduction, that is a really important issue. So within the business plan, within the business case, it sets out in the deliverability section that we will need to gear up, and we're looking at either a enhanced partnership or a franchise model at the medium investment level set out in the business plan would require more staff, but a franchise model would require a team increase in size of 15, with, in addition to that, interim or consultancy support in particular specialist areas that would allow the development of the scheme. And then clearly we would need to move to a business as usual model. And that would have to as well include considering those key questions that have come up. For instance, when Rebecca was speaking about the importance of ongoing consultation, using the intelligence we've got and then continuing to build on that, we will need that capacity to make sure that we have that capacity to continue the ongoing dialogue, that transparency, as well as that monitoring of impact and making sure we learn from the early stages to inform the later stages, as indeed other places have done. Hopefully that's a useful intro, and I can now just hand over to my colleague Rob to speak more specifically about the affordability of the business case.
Thank you. So the business case itself, the headline numbers that are presented are the central case. We then undertook sensitivity analysis around that looking at quite a broad brush approach, looking at a percentage variation in either income or expenditure, rather than saying this income's reducing because of fewer passengers or grant being lower, etc. It was just, what if there's less money into the system, or what if the costs go up? And what you saw when that was put in is, as you'd expect, if the costs go up, either you have to raise more funding, and there's elements of that we've got built in. In particular, there's an operational reserve built up within the business case that we've benchmarked against other areas that are franchised in how large that would need to be to buffer against potential downturns. There's also the element that if the network were more expensive, funding were less available, the network would have to be managed. And that's true under enhanced partnership or franchising. It's just how much influence the public sector would have on the management of those decisions, which is significantly stronger under a franchise network where the local public sector would have control, rather than through agreement in an enhanced partnership model. In terms of those operational reserves, that's already started being put in place. The board approved their medium-term financial plan on Wednesday, which included the creation of an operational reserve for passenger transport. And to be clear, that's there regardless of the decision taken over the net when the mayor makes his decision. So it's there to meet potential future costs, either in enhanced partnership or franchising, but the first steps have been made to buffer the combined authority against any potential downside. Just wanted to add one clarification there, because I wasn't quite sure, Councillor Sharp, whether you did say it, but we can't legally borrow to meet revenue costs. So we wouldn't borrow to meet a shortfall on the operations.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Sharp, just on the second part of your question around some of the modelling that was sort of inherent within the assessment. So the model took sort of the current demand levels as a baseline in terms of assessing the current network linked to obviously how the network operates and patronage, and then looked at using DFT, well, it did use, sorry, DFT sort of transport guidance around increased levels of service and what that generates in terms of journey time and reliability benefits to sort of spit out the other end some of the benefits, both for franchising and enhanced partnership in the model. So what that leaves us with is there's a modelled approach in the assessment around increasing the network in that medium-term investment scenario, either franchising or an enhanced partnership. But obviously in any implementation planning, we appreciate the level and nature of services that would be improved from 2027, particularly as Judith mentioned, once franchising, if decided upon, would go live, is still subject to that sort of engagement with local residents around the type and nature of those services. But inherent with that would be further analysis around how that changes any of the baseline that we've mapped in the assessment.
Thank you. These are all really incredibly helpful questions, and I'm aware this, again, is a reasonably long item, but clearly it's of such importance to us all in this area that we need to ensure all the questions are answered. So we really are making an informed decision as a committee. Would anyone else like to make a point? Councillor Wakeford, I notice you haven't spoken yet. Would you like to do so?
Thank you. I think Councillor Sharp's question was a good one, and the answers there around risk associated with franchising model are really helpful to understand, because clearly nothing is risk-free, but by dint of that, the status quo is not without risk of risk that is already being realised of a declining service for reasons we understand across the Cambridge and Peterborough area, and as intimated in helpful answers as well there, I think the alternative of enhanced partnership is, as I read this, not without risk either. Risks of faintly different nature, but potentially a greater risk of not getting the benefits at all, not least given the entire thing would be predicated, if I understand correctly, upon agreement by a majority of operators in the way that majority is measured. So I think what I take from the officer answers we've just heard, but I'd certainly invite any further comment if that's not quite the right steer, is that absolutely there is risk associated with this, but there's risk in the alternative options as well, and that has been accounted for in the recommendation before us to move forward with the franchising option. So interested if any comments necessary on that, it may not be. In response to Councillor Seaton's initial question, entirely reasonably, what can residents expect from this and from the options before us? Obviously, speaking on behalf of Huntingdonshire District Council, where we're significantly rural and semi-rural as well, this is of acute interest to myself and colleagues across the political spectrum in the district. And we've had experience within our time, many of us on this committee, of residents facing at short notice loss of lifeline bus routes in rural areas under the current system, which is easy to criticise operators for proposing decisions at one level, but actually, when a commercial operator is proposing a commercial decision in a commercial environment, it's actually quite hard to realistically, I think, expect outcomes contrary to their interests in the system that they're required to work in. So what I see as clearly coming through in the paperwork before us is benefit in changing the structure they're working in to enable naturally better outcomes, as opposed to just us asking commercial operators nicely to do things that aren't in their commercial interests and are hard for them to justify to themselves or shareholders. There's potentially both of the options before us, but franchising is overwhelmingly stronger in that regard as I read it. So this is both a really complex decision for us to make with enormous amounts of information before us, as we've referenced, a huge amount of work, but also in the event turns out to be relatively straightforward in that, like colleagues who've spoken already, I see this as quite clear cut that the appropriate decision for us today is indeed to recommend that the board also join us in recommending that the mayor move forward with franchising. And thank you to officers for all their work in getting us this far.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. And I've been scribbling away through all of this debate because I want to ensure that I'm able to really represent what you have said when it comes to the debates in board, when I'm being asked, I'm sure, to feed back from the TIC as part of that discussion. I think you make a very interesting point there, Councillor Wakeford, if I might just pick up on that. We've spent a lot of time kind of digging into the detail, and quite rightly so, but if we bring that back to that issue of control, and it comes back to something I think that Councillor Shaler, I think it was Councillor Shaler, it might have actually been Councillor Ellis, talked about in terms of this is not about kind of personal comments on people running companies, it's about structures and systems. And my understanding, and this was a question I just wanted to ask to ensure that I've got this absolutely right. My understanding is that in an enhanced partnership, it is a majority of bus companies, but by mileage operated, not by the number of the companies. And therefore, it would be very possible for large operators within that system to dominate the system. And that is not in any way a criticism of any large operator. It is simply to say that in an enhanced partnership, if what the committee want is a level of control, that actually an enhanced partnership puts that control very much back, doesn't it, on the bus operators to agree. So I think, and clearly, I assume franchising is still about partnership with our bus operators in terms of discussing and planning together. But I think you make a really important point there, Councillor Wakeford, around that very simple question of control. So we had a couple more questions there that I think it would be very helpful to answer. And I think probably then we are ready to go to a vote unless anyone's got anything else they wish to bring forward. So, Andrew, are you going to be the person on this one?
Yeah, so in terms of Councillor Wakeford and then Chair's comments around the process for an enhanced partnership, I guess I was frantically trying to find the answer to the mileage, which I might have to come back on. But it is the principle that any enhanced partnership would be through negotiation with your existing operators in the region who run services. And that would form a plan and then schemes underneath that for specific things within that partnership that might link to investment in infrastructure like bus priority. It might link to ticketing schemes or investment into services. But I think it's fair to say, as is covered in the response report, that that is a negotiated process. So there's no guarantee that those benefits can be achieved unless you can obviously achieve it through that negotiated process. But there are many enhanced partnerships that work across the country, obviously, since the national bus strategy came out in 2021. I will check back on a specific point about mileage, but I think, yeah, just to reaffirm that point, that the enhanced partnership is a negotiated process. A franchise approach does not need or require that negotiated process with operators in the region.
Yeah, and Andrew, I'm going to be a girly swat now. I think it's in section 2.5 of the report. An enhanced partnership requires the agreement of over 50% of the bus operators in an area based on mileage. So I get a tick for having having read through all that. Okay, are there any final questions or comments on this? As I said, I have kind of deliberately kept my comments to a minimum because as a board member, I will get plenty of opportunity to speak at length at this. And what I want to do here is ensure that the committee has had the chance to say and scrutinise as much as needed, because that's incredibly important. I would, of course, wish just to comment that with my Cambridge City representative hat on, Cambridge City is supportive of franchising and supportive of the recommendations. So I think we're going to move to the vote. I would like to request that we take a recorded vote on item D, if that's okay. I think we have to take a vote on whether to do that vote. Is that correct? So could I see those in favour, please, of taking a recorded vote on D? I think that's unanimous from voting members. Thank you. So when it comes to recommendation D, we will take a recorded vote there. So I will read the recommendations one by one. There are two to note, but I will read them anyway, given the importance of this item. So 1, note the completion of the recommendation A, note the completion of the bus reform consultation process, its extent and the responses received. B, note the contents of the Westco consultation report at Appendix 2. C, we have a vote on this one, to recommend to the Combined Authority Board that it approves the contents of the CPCA consultation response report at Appendix 3. May I see votes in favour of that? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I need a proposer, a seconder. Of course I do. Now, I think it would, I wonder if our county and Peterborough colleagues may wish to propose and second this. So Councillor Ellis to propose. Councillor Shaler, you happen to second. So we have Councillor Ellis proposing, Councillor Shaler seconding. So votes in favour, item C. Recommendation C, yes. Okay, so I think that is unanimous. And then we have recommendation D, to recommend to the Mayor that he makes a franchising scheme as set out at Appendix 5, complying with all associated statutory requirements. I'll now hand over to Joe to take that recorded vote. Need a proposer and seconder for that one as well. So Councillor Ellis, Councillor Shaler.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go around alphabetically and ask for each of your voice. If you can please say for, against or abstain. Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Seaton.
For.
Councillor Shaler.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
And finally, Councillor Wakeford.
Story of my life at the end of alphabets. 4.
Councillor Wakeford, normally it's me, so I'm grateful that you take it in this one. Thank you. That is unanimous vote for item D. I should point out for those watching who aren't aware, the reason I asked councillors Ellis and Shayla whether they wish to propose and second is because they hold a special position as the highways authorities, which clearly are particularly connected to this work. Thank you very much. I suggest we take a quick comfort break and then we'll talk about how we can rejig the agenda order to make sure people are here for the ones they need. 5 minutes, please. welcome back. I'll try not to give you a heart attack, Judith. Well, welcome back to the second part of the Combined Authority Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and welcome back also to those who are online. Now, we've had some fantastic debate and discussion this morning. That has meant that we've spent quite a lot of time on those first items, understandably so, and given their importance. So I'm going to propose some shuffles around to ensure that people are all here for some of the items I know they are very keen to speak on. So my proposal that I would like to move is that we move the East West Rail consultation response item 9 to the next item on the agenda. And then we move item 12, I think it is that correct? The Royston to Granta Park Strategic Transport Study, which is the A505 piece, to after that. And then we'll run through the rest as normal, but we'll move those two up because that will allow people who have to leave to be able to contribute to that, particularly Councillor MacDonald. So I'm going to move that. Could I please have a seconder for that? I'll take Councillor MacDonald. And could I see then votes in favour of making that agenda item change, please? Councillor Seaton, Councillor Sharp, how are you voting on this? You happy to change? Brilliant. Right, that's unanimous for change. So what we're now going to do is move to item 9, which is the East West Rail consultation response. Tim.
Good afternoon, members. Today we'll be reviewing the Combined Authorities response to the East West Rail consultation. This response has been submitted in our capacity as a Strategic Transport Authority for the region, ensuring alignment with our local transport connectivity plan and broader objectives around delivering sustainable, inclusive and integrated transport solutions. Our response represents a strategic high-level submission that reflects the overarching priority for the region. However, it is important to emphasise that it does not preclude constituent councils, individual members, stakeholders and members of the public from submitting their own responses, particularly in relation to more detailed localised concerns they may have. The response has been developed collaboratively, drawing on the input from this committee, the Environment and Sustainability Community Committee, the Business Board and leaders. We've facilitated 2 workshops to gather feedback, ensuring a broad range of perspectives and insights are captured. In addition, draft versions of the submission have been circulated for review and comment on multiple occasions to members and officers, fostering collaboration and refinement at every stage. As we approach today's deadline, I have delegated responsibility to ensure the document is submitted both promptly and effectively. Our final submission has been carefully aligned with the responses provided by England National and Heartland and the County Council, ensuring consistency across the region's collective priorities. Just for note, on page 4 regarding the eastern access to Cambridge Station, there is a full stop when there should be a comma. Importantly, however, our response, as outlined previously by the Deputy Mayor, remained geographically agnostic, ensuring that it focused on achieving the best outcome for the region without favouring any specific alignment. To summarise our position, the East West Rail project represents a transformational infrastructure initiative for the growth of the region, ensuring enhanced connectivity between Oxford, Cambridge and surrounding region. However, there are a number of critical areas for improvement and opportunity to maximise the benefits. The key point to outline in the paper, but very briefly, alignment with our strategic objectives. East West Rail aligned to our overarching vision for integrated transport network. However, full alignment with the local transport and connectivity plan and complementary project must be enforced, such as the bus reform programme and the A4.
Sorry, could I just pause? We've got some noise coming through from somewhere. All right, thanks.
Yeah, cool. And then in relation to the environmental and biodiversity concern, East West Rail must lead on environmental sustainability and responsibility, so including in that is full electrification, commit to electrification from day one, biodiversity net gain to target at least a 20% net gain, doubling nature vision. And minimise disruption, the use of innovative solutions to protect ecological sensitive sites, and proactively plan to avoid unintended impacts, and ensure that we learn lessons from the A14 and also the A428 construction, connectivity and integration. We realise that in order to realise the potential, we need to look at first and last mile solution, ensuring that safe walking, cycling, wheeling and multimodal links are included, with East West Rail Company funding and maintaining the connections. Bus rail integration, ensuring true ticketing, public timetable alignment and seamless interchange. Regional links, prioritising capacity for connection to Suffolk, Norfolk and emerging growth areas, and making sure that we have the links to Huntingdon and Peterborough. In alignment with other key schemes, so the East West Rail must coordinate with improvement on the A428 and the corridor. The Camborne to Cambridge, deliver a user-friendly integrated transport experience through innovative station design, and then also remove the bottleneck at the Ely Junction to maximise the freight and passenger movement. During delivery, we need to East West Rail need to make sure they mitigate the impacts, to engage with communities and stakeholders appropriately and transparently. Implement robust traffic and noise management plans, and provide for solutions that are for local challenges, such as the Fen Road level crossing. In relation to community severance, to avoid splitting communities, the East West Rail Company should ensure pedestrian cycling friendly crossings, maximise station accessibility, particularly in rural areas, and engage community to address severance concerns and co-develop solutions. On to sustainable transport network, East West Rail should promote rail freight to reduce road dependency and support the Combined Authority freight strategy. Incorporate green infrastructure into the design and support regional freight movement of material, including to the Fenland Reservoir. And then on to local planning consideration. Strategic station development at Winteringham, Harston, Comberton would deliver long-term benefit by connecting growing communities, supporting education and reducing the reliance on car. Safeguarding land near the proposed route and collaborating with local planning authorities is essential to ensure that these may be delivered in the future. And finally, in regard to legacy implications, the East West Rail Company has the opportunity to inspire our future generations through engaging with schools and colleges to promote STEM careers, and commit to employing local talent at fair wages to deliver local long-term regional benefits. That is a very quick summary of our submission. Thank you, Chair and members. And just to highlight, the recommendation is to note the Combined Authority's response to this non-statutory consultation.
Thank you. I will open for discussion in a moment. I just wanted to make a couple of points clear to the committee, but also to anyone who may be watching here, because we have had a lot of discussions on this as a committee, as in workshops. That has been because the timetable of the responses means that pretty much the second this meeting has finished, Tim will need to upload our responses to the East West Rail consultation website, because the deadline is today. So I want to reassure anyone watching that it isn't that we've only been given this cold today and that we now have very little time to comment. This has included a large number of discussions running up to this as well. I should also say that does mean there are very, very limited capacity to change things, although I believe there are one or two suggestions of some minor wording changes. And if that's the case, then obviously raise that and we will see if officers are able to incorporate that. I will open this out to questions and comments. Councillor MacDonald first.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a comment. First of all, myself and Councillor Shayler and Councillor Sharp looked at the County Council's response to East West Rail. As far as I can see, there was nothing in that submission, this submission, that cut across each other, which is to be expected. Also noted, but I left my comment until now, we had a resident call in before and asking about East West Rail. The South Cambridgeshire District Council response was also broken down with feedback from the parishes affected. And we understand very well, you know, from a range of things, so impact during the construction period, to the alignment of the route, to the construction, the height, etc., etc. So for anybody not aware of that, I mean, in the area as a whole, but especially in South Cambridgeshire, if I can refer them to that report that came to Cabinet, whatever it was last week or the week before, it does address and has been submitted to the government very detailed parish concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And it may just be worth reminding us for clarification that the response that we are looking at today as a committee is designed to be read alongside those more detailed location-specific responses of the constituent authorities and others who have put things forward and other key stakeholders. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to open with comment similarly. There may be more sort of granular details many of us might ideally like to see with respect to our districts, but it's right and proper. We can pick those up at that level. I think this response is really helpful and obviously strategic points relevant to connectivity and stations that Tim flagged in Huntingdonshire. We're pleased that are being highlighted here, particularly in the context of the warning the chair's given us as to the timeframes involved in response with the consultation that closes today. A number of us have obviously seen and engaged with this in advance, but a number of our residents and stakeholders would have reviewed papers from the point they were published and written to many of us with comments, and many helpful. And the fact that we're not picking things up necessarily all today doesn't mean that they weren't helpful to inform the thinking. And of course, this is only a non-statutory consultation anyway. All sorts of further steps ahead, as well as opportunities for input by constituent councils. That said, he says nervously, I think there is one point that has been made compellingly by a resident and a business with particular reason to know about it, that the potential impact upon food security isn't currently identified as a strategic point that East West Rail should give regard to in our response, and that it might usefully be. I have to say, I do find that persuasive. I appreciate time is enormously limited. Were there scope for us to name chat that as a point, which I think could be unpacked, but is significantly self-explanatory, given we know where the proposed routing is through. I do think that would be helpful. I am seeing nods. Very grateful for work done at pace on that.
Thank you. And Councillor Wakeford, I'm also really grateful that you did alert officers in advance to that, which is very helpful. So they've been able to do some scoping and work out whether that is possible. So I'll go to Tim in a moment to see if he's able to fit that in. I just had a couple of things I wanted to add, actually. From my perspective as a representative on this committee, very, very pleased to see full electrification from day one, very clearly put in this. I know that's something that has been raised by a very large number of members, but also key stakeholders, and that is crucial in so many ways. So thank you that that's in here. I also note the importance of connectivity in stations. It's really key that we don't end up with white elephants of stations that are sitting in the middle of nowhere, not properly serviced. And I think we've made that point in the past as a committee, and it's good to see that reflected in here. I had two questions. It might be useful to get some technical responses on why dualling the line to Newmarket is something we have mentioned, because I know that's something that Annabelle raised in in her response earlier. So it would be good just to have some information on why we are looking at that. And I think it would also be helpful to know what further input we will have after this stage. Councillor Wakeford referred to that, and I think it would be helpful to understand where else we are able to feed in as this develops. So, Tim, are you the best person to?
So I think there's the 3 points on that. So in relation to Councillor Wakeford's point, thank you for the pre-warning around the food plight. I have drafted a section for inclusion in the final submission. So that has been done. with regard to the dualling to Newmarket, the point around the reasoning for that bit is twofold. One is around not precluding the route being able to go from the Suffolk, East Coast, etc., and all the way through to Oxford, Swindon, Bristol, and allowing for that route going forward. So that is why we are looking at the dualling of the access on the route from Newmarket, and also it shouldn't preclude looking at where the potential for further stations in that area and in Cambridge East location as well. So there are two parts of that. One is looking at localized connectivity within Cambridge, but also looking at that further regional connectivity between Suffolk and also through to the city, but also Cambridge, but onward to Bedford, but also into Huntingdonshire as well. And then in regards to further input, myself and the team are on a technical various working groups. So from a technical perspective, we have ongoing engagement with East West Rail, but also with Transport East and England Heartland to look at the improvement across the regions. And I do mean regions, so that is looking at Suffolk and Norfolk as well. And then looking at that from a technical perspective, and then from a more substantive perspective, I'm sure that there is an opportunity to engage with government and also Great British Railway and Network Rail alongside East West Rail on some of our key items that we want progressed. And also the final point is, I think it refers back to the Transport Select Committee and the rail investment pipeline and what do we want from that. So I think we've got an opportunity to reiterate some of our points in that submission too.
Thank you. Are there any other points? So we have Councillor Shaler. Anyone else? Councillor Shaler, please.
Thank you very much. I think this is on. Yeah. I also want to mention the fact that the different groups are working incredibly well together with our officers on the highways and transport as well as the combined authority. So the technical responses do look very similar, and they should. So that's the first thing. I just want to mention a few other more parochial things first about Cambridge. One of them is the possibility of eastern access to the central station. Central station in Cambridge is overcrowded, and there are obviously opportunities here, but also risks to the eastern side of the station. One of the problems with the central station at the moment is the insufficient provision for cycles. The cycle building is overtaxed. If we were to go down the route of having access to the east of the station for active transport, then I would very much like to have more provision for cycle parking, for instance. Again, in Cambridge, it was interesting to see that 22% of the journeys that start in North Cambridge station end in Central Station. And this is likely to increase immensely when South Station opens. So an possibility of an east station due to the dualling part out towards Cherry Hinton, Fulbourn would have a much larger effect than is obvious on within Cambridge transport. And we are desperate to get some sort of a within Cambridge passenger transport system that dovetails with all of the other parts of the transport network that we are improving. So that is something that I would, and we would put strong support behind. And if we can tell East West Rail, please, an Eastern station. Other comments are about the, understandable objections to route alignments and things of people that live in place. But I have been surprised that there is quite a contrast with the current A428 tearing an enormous swathe across the countryside, and there doesn't seem to be that much in the way of protest. But, this is how these things go. The last thing I want to say is that the improved rail connectivity from Cambridge is not just about Cambridge, it's about the area. And so along with Ely area rail capacity enhancement, these make a much stronger case for Wisbech Rail as well. Everybody on that rail local network hub stands to benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I just wanted to add one thing which came out from what you'd said there, Councillor Shayler, which I think it's very easy when we look at things in committee like this to be looking at things from a very technical perspective and a strategic perspective, and that's our job as a strategic transport authority. But I think my plea would be to East West Rail is just to remember that there's a really strong human aspect to this. This is people worried about the impact on their businesses, on their homes, and obviously people also excited about the prospects that may come here. But anything like this brings a lot of uncertainty and a lot of concern. And I would ask East West Rail to continue to do everything it can to engage with people who are concerned and to do all they can to kind of reassure and to mitigate. Particularly, I think we've mentioned in the report here, I know, a lot around the impact as that rail line is started and the impact on works, but we've also raised things around impact once that's in place. So I just think it's important that we all remember that human aspect as well as that strategic aspect. Now, I believe that there isn't actually a vote on this because we've delegated responsibility, but can I just see, are we all comfortable with the response that's being sent off? I don't see any dissent from that, and I think that's just important for us to know. Tim, is there anything else you want to say before we move on? Thank you. We're now going on to item 12. Councillor Seddon, yes, I know you have to go, and thank you very much for your contributions today. Appreciate that. Now we're moving on to item 12, which is Royston to Granta Park Strategic Transport Study. Emma White, Acting Transport Strategy and Policy Manager, will introduce this report. Emma.
Hi, I'll keep the introduction brief so we can discuss it. This report outlines the progress made on the A505 Royston to Granta Park study, including the development of the strategic outline case. The interventions under consideration in the study are designed to address current transport challenges, facilitate more sustainable travel choices, and contribute to the reduction in the region's carbon footprint. The strategic outline case presents a case for the need for transport investment in the corridor, aligning closely with the economic growth objectives, social and environmental priorities, as well as local, regional and national policy goals. This aligns to the emerging local growth plan also. In terms of further work would include setting out an outline business case, which would provide more detailed value for money assessment on all options, as well as the preferred package. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go straight to Councillor MacDonald to make his contribution first.
Thanks, Chair, and I really appreciate again for you and other members of the committee that moved this item up the agenda. I'll be brief. I mean, first of all, just to emphasise the importance of this study, and I think that's well understood amongst the officer team who've done the work. This has been long in the making. I can still remember a discussion, I think 5 years ago, on this. And actually, I forgot to bring it today, but I have a brochure at home from 1985 discussing alleviating traffic on the A505. I'll get a copy and I'll send it to Emma. Anyway, to be serious, so there's two key points I wanted to make. First of all is, in the report, it does refer to, the queuing and the issues at, especially at the 1301 and the McDonald's roundabout junction with the 505. It's carrying, as you see in the long report, 30,000 vehicles a day. And that 30,000 is absolutely at the tipping point of what the road can manage. And of course, the big development that's going to take place is the Genome Campus, where there will be an additional 3,000 people employed there over the next 5 to 7 years. So I have a plea on that front, which is, and the County Council is fully aligned on this, so I think we've got a head start, is to re-look at the queuing issues and the capacity at that roundabout, the McDonald's roundabout, because otherwise we will sleepwalk into a major problem. I do support the report, by the way, I should have said at the start, and I think there's a lot of good work done, but there's a couple of things that of which that is one that really, really needs to be addressed. And the Genome Campus are open to that. The County Council is open to that. The District Council is open to that. And therefore, if we can get everybody from the Combined Authority on board with re-looking at that junction, that would be really good. The second one was, which is not directly for the Combined Authority, but it would help to get the Combined Authority to support, to engage with National Highways to open up southbound junction 9 of the M11. It has been done on the M11 at junction 7A already, so there is a precedent. And by doing that, it would massively alleviate the pressure on the pressure cooker, which is the A505. And it would be money extremely well spent. And from the indications of the work done on junction 7A, it would not be a hugely expensive project. So those are the two things, Chair. Thanks again for hearing it, and I look forward to working with officers and councillors further. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other comments or questions on this item? Councillor Shaler?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Councillor McDonald said most of it. I want to reiterate the good collaboration that's gone on between the county and the Combined Authority on this. And as Councillor McDonald said, this has been going for a long time. I wanted to express strong support for the report, and also acknowledge the importance of reflecting any strategic growth plans to refine and shape strategic solutions in any further work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. Emma, would you like to respond to some of that, please? Or all of it, in fact.
Yeah, I can take the comments back, and I think the general picture is that the outline business case would pick up all of this work. At present, we haven't got funding for this, but if sorted, it would go through the single assurance framework and take forwards. But yeah, the SOC shows the sort of case for the changes needed, and as you said, would need to maybe pick up more development as sort of the growth is showing, and the outline business case would pick this all up.
Thank you. If we have nothing else on that, this is just for note, isn't it? So we don't need to have a vote on this one. So Councillor McDonald, you're very welcome, of course, to stay for as long as you were able, but we've done this item. Now what we're going to do now is move back up to item 8, which, Emma, I think this is you again, actually. Don't go away. Come back. Item 8 we're moving back to is well done, we got you, is the Local Transport and Connectivity Plan Monitoring Evaluation Update. And Emma, again, you're going to introduce this report for us, so please go ahead.
This paper seeks to provide an update on the Local Transport and Connectivity Plan and the proposed updates to the monitoring chapter, and particularly the revised key performance indicators. A comprehensive review of the 37 key performance indicators in the LTCP has been undertaken to ensure the monitoring framework is supported by relevant, robust and up-to-date data. Appendix A in the paper presents a detailed summary of the findings on the KPI review, but in summary, we're looking to add 3 new indicators, amend 10 of the indicators, and then also commission data collection for 10 of the indicators. Following approval of the outlined recommendations in the paper, work will begin on a monitoring and evaluation report for 24-25, with a final report expected summer 25. For measures requiring commission data collection analysis, results may not be available by this point due to the time needed for procurement and data collection. We intend to report on the progress of the LTCP on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions on this one, please? Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to comment on C11 of the appendix. This is the only item in the list which refers to digital and the digital connectivity bit of, rather than transport connectivity. And while I know the Connected Nations report is very comprehensive and breaks down a lot of things, I wondered if maybe it's worth breaking some of that out to give digital a bit more prominence in that, and to consider things rather than this says broadband, but obviously there's mobile, there's the difference between residential and commercial, rural and urban, but also if we take the concept of some of the other metrics, it's around access and accessibility and income and how many homes are connected from social housing compared to how many homes are connected from owner occupiers. Because I think while the overarching metric is green and we as an area do very well on this, I think there's some things in the detail that we could pick up on and improve. Thank you.
Any other comments on this one? I wanted to pick up something Rebecca said around the detail, and I'd like to see kind of committee's view on how we address this, because I'm very aware we've already had Councillor Seaton has needed to go. We're now at 1:45, but this is really, really important to get right. So I'm genuinely very torn between the fact that I want to make sure that we progress rather than not monitor anything, because we want it to be perfect before anything is monitored. Nonetheless, we want to make sure we've got the granularity right. And I wonder what capacity we would have to dig further into this. I mean, I certainly have got a whole stack of questions myself that I would like to ask. I can see everyone going, oh my goodness, now, if we had the time. I've also got questions that have come in from local residents and people who are interested, some of which you've already seen. So if we were to pass this today, what capacity would we have to kind of make further changes, amend, maybe have a workshop as a committee to really dig into this? Because KPIs are so important. So I don't know who wants to answer that. Emma, do you want to come in first?
The governance side I'll leave to other people to answer, but in terms of the data collection, we haven't got a round idea of costs yet, the ones we need to go out to collect data. So we would probably need to come back with suggestions about the ones we've collected data for on costs and what we can and can't do. So there would be room, and I'll let Tim sort of follow up afterwards, around that they are finalised and how we would like them, but we still need to go away and go through that procurement and understand the costs associated to some of them anyway.
Yeah, and just before I bring Judith in, I mean, some of the questions I've received certainly have been around, for example, as you're aware, could we do more to track on rail and usage? So it will be useful to understand some of that. But Judith, and then I'll take the Mayor and Councillor MacDonald as well.
Very briefly, I just wanted to I wanted to make a couple of remarks at a sort of headline level, reflecting that in the last year, obviously, TIC has emphasised the importance of having that kind of performance reporting, that transparency around performance reporting, and our commitment to doing this. And I think this paper is a really important part of us being able to demonstrate the progress that we've made on the local transport and connectivity plan and are continuing to make. I think one of the things I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to is obviously a lot of what we're already, is already being reported on. And there's things within the State of the Region report, within the KPIs that are reported to overview and scrutiny that we're delivering on. We're also therefore adding, tweaking, changing where this learning's happening. So I just wanted to reassure the committee there's a lot happening, but what we're doing is building, and we've obviously very happy to work with you on more detail on some particular things. We are, in addition, doing work on the monitoring and evaluation of, for instance, the preset routes, because we've always committed to needing to know what's happening in terms of the patronage on those, so that, again, we can learn. And again, such things as the Tiger cards, where are they being taken up, how many times are they being used, which journeys they're being used on, and bringing that forward. So that's happening as well. So just wanted to reassure everyone that there's a lot of parallel work going on here, which is all equally important, but very happy to work with you on to have a workshop to explore it in more detail, as well as making sure that we're bringing forward the project outputs as well, which are obviously more like the SOAM example in the director's report, where you can see what an individual project is contributing to it. So it's a really important issue that we want to continue to work on.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald. Oh, I think the Mayor was first, actually. So Mayor Dr. Nick, and then Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. One of the question really for the officers is these KPIs, where do they sit alongside the State of the Region report that we obviously developed over the last however long? Are they can we go to these? And I was just trying to recognise them from the State of the Region report, and at the same time looking at it myself on my phone. But the other thing is, I actually just want to back up what Rachel said. it's not a criticism as such, but it is a local transport and connectivity plan. And I was, as we put it together, I know we were seen as quite trailblazing, because we talked about it wasn't just a local transport plan. We put in connectivity with that evidence and the emphasis on digital connectivity. And as I spend increasing amounts of my time being told that AI is the most important thing that's going to change all of our lives, and how that's going to then sit particularly with transport, I just want to echo your comment, Rachel. I think that's the benefit of having you on the board, in terms of I will put my hand up and say I probably do spend a lot of time thinking about buses, and more increasingly linking in with opportunities of physical infrastructure and rail. But we do need to have more drill down on digital connectivity. So mea culpa. Thank you. Sorry, that was it. Just having a little kind of reflection. Hi.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I was just getting a bit of clarification just to put before the committee to see what you think. Apparently, the preference is for this item in any case to go to the March 19th board, which would allow us, I think, to defer this item to the March. So to continue this discussion now, to give you some feedback, but we could, I think, defer this to the March the 5th tick to allow us to have a workshop before to really dig into some of these KPIs and ensure we've all had the debate it needed. If committee members felt that was appropriate, and officers can reassure us it isn't slowing us down, because that's really important too. So maybe if I could just take Councillor McDonald's point and Councillor Wakeford, and then we'll hear from officers, and then I'll go to Councillor Shayler after that. So, right, Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Really quick point. So in terms of connectivity in the widest sense, we've got a real life case study coming down the tracks, excuse my French, mixing my metaphors, Cambridge South Station. Cambridge South Station will be operational this year. And what all of us are hoping for is, especially in the southern part of South Cambs, that we see a change, we see modal shift. We see people getting on the train and heading to Addenbrooks and getting off at Cambridge South Station. So it was just a plea from me that we as a board keep an eye on that, because the set of assumptions for traffic and passenger numbers at Cambridge South. And my great hope is that we'll see real modal shift as a result of that coming online. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is, if I get your responses on whether a deferral is appropriate and won't hold us up, then I'll come to the other members. So shall I go to Emma, because she's indicated she'd quite like to speak. So Emma, are you sure? What do we think?
Yes, so we're happy to defer. The intention, we have the option of going to the February or the March board, so we can go to the March board and have room for more discussion. And we welcome the level of interest and debate to make sure that this is doing the job. I think the very important point that Councillor McDonald has made there about ensuring we understand the impact of investment and how it brings about change is really important, both from the strategic point of view and also the impact of individual projects. To answer the Mayor's point about the state of the region data, essentially the difference would be is this is a greater level of granularity than is at the state of the region. So it builds upon and provides a more detailed look at the transport and connectivity aspects. And just relating back to the kind of points around digital, obviously Rebecca's points were again looking at a greater level of granularity again. And we do have the digital connectivity strategy that I think we approved in the autumn. And again, that will have more granular details, but we can certainly work across the team in order to bring some of those into this piece of work. But yes, we'd be happy to defer and have the workshop, Chair.
And I should say in suggesting that, I am in no way suggesting that the piece of work is not complete or appropriate. It's just that I'm also aware this is getting our KPIs right is something that we may wish to exercise a little more scrutiny to, in effect, reflect the quality of the report that we see before us. But I'll just take a couple of quick points. You would like to come in?
A workshop would be great to work through it all, and even advance ideas around KPIs so that I can work with the policy and insight team about what data we can get for free and what we need to pay for, and what we can and can't do would be really useful to prepare for that workshop. So please contact me in advance of it, and we can at least come with sort of all the evidence base to different KPIs would be really useful.
Thank you. I think that would be incredibly helpful. If we're going to do this, it shouldn't just be a 45-minute talking shop. Neil.
Thank you very much, Chair. The strategic objectives align very well with what we're doing across the county. Sorry, a slight from the left field here, but one of the aspects that impinge on safety, and this is about the outcomes for fewer deaths and injuries. We sometimes have an inappropriate or lacking regulatory environment, and so this is something that we need to kick up to the government, I think. But an example is the guided busway, which is currently being regulated by the Safety at Work Act 1974. It's clearly a piece of transport infrastructure. We need some appropriate regulation there. Also, with the new types of vehicles, the electric scooters, privately owned ones, there's no regulatory environment at all. These obviously can be part, but at the moment they do pose safety risks to pedestrians and others. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wakeford, I think you'd indicated as well.
Yeah, thank you. I would very much support the suggestion of fuller conversation around digging into some of these, because I think a lot of them may be the best realistic indicators we can get to, but kicking the tires on that, where inevitably they're imperfect, would be useful. I think the ones I'd just signpost at this point briefly are the handful connected with measuring cars in households. And for example, C2, C3, C6, and so on. And the suggestion is to move towards an assumption that you can add up the number of cars in an area and divide it by households, and clearly you can get an average number of cars per household. But actually, two family houses with one car each is one situation, whereas two family houses next to each other, one with two, one with none, gives you the average of the same thing. And yet, particularly in a significantly rural area, having no cars rather than a car may be a deliberate choice. It may reflect abilities to travel actively and so on, or it may shine a light on a transport limitation, whereas a household with two cars may present an opportunity for us to be targeting enabling people to reduce the number of cars that they've got. So a sort of a 2 and a 0 versus a 1 and a 1 will come up with the same average, and yet in one scenario we might be trying to support both households to feel able to change behaviour, and in another we might not be looking at seeking a change on either. And as I say, I think I dwell on that point because I think it links to multiple KPIs. Maybe we can't do better than that given the out-of-date census data, but I think might bear reflection on how we measure what we're trying to achieve relevant, especially in more rural areas.
Thank you. So I think I need to now propose deferral, don't I, and have a seconder, and then we will take a vote. So I will propose deferral of this item until the March 5th committee. Could I have a seconder for that, please, Councillor Shaler? Thank you. Can I see those in favour of deferring this item? Thank you. Mayor, you are allowed to vote on this one if you... Yeah. Yeah. So that's unanimous in terms of voting members, and we will, sorry to put more workshop organisation on the team, but if we could arrange a workshop before that, so we've all had the chance to really, as Councillor Wakeford said, kick the tyres on that. I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Emma. So we're going to now move on to the next item, which is the Signet Bridge, the Fletton Quays footbridge. And Anna Graham, Transport Programme Manager, will introduce this report. This is item 10 on the agenda.
Good afternoon. I'll keep it brief. This is just a paper to provide the committee with an update on the progress of the Signet Bridge scheme. And it also outlines that we had to undergo a change control process to seek additional funding, which went to both the investment committee and subsequently and to the combined authority board. It looks to utilise active travel capital funding and an underspend on the Transforming Cities Fund programme. Since writing the paper, the change control has been approved by both the Investment Committee and also the Combined Authority Board. And we've also received confirmation from the Department for Transport that they are content that the underspend of the Transforming Cities Fund can be used for this project also. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I will go first to Councillor Ellis, as I'm sure he has things he wishes to say on this.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the Investment Committee and the board for agreeing to the additional money because costs went up in the project, hence why there was an overspend. It's a very important bridge which will link the two growth areas together, both the embankment where the university is and also Fletting Quays, and it's a key for active travel in the area for cyclists, for pedestrians. Otherwise they're walking on a very dangerous smallish pavement on a busy road. So thank you very much for this, and that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Yes, some of us have seen this at the investment committee as well, where it, I think, was regarded as fairly straightforward. It's not even an overspend in the sort of direct meaning of the term. The projection of costs appears to have gone up, but also, if I've read correctly, the benefit cost ratio projection has increased as well. Here, so this isn't a controversial use of money. It looks great value, and what construction projects aren't increasing in costs from previous projections over time at the moment. So obviously it's critical we manage funding as efficiently as we can, but I think this is quite uncontroversial and will deliver significant benefits. So pleased to support it.
Thank you, Mayor Dr. Nick.
Following on from Councillor Ellis, I just want to say well done to the officers for being fleet of foot when confronted by challenges in terms of increasing costs, the ability to work with the active travel team, the way to work with our business grants, and the way that we have been able to demonstrate that the Combined Authority really does wholeheartedly believe in investment in this particular part of the area that we cover. In total, that's over £5 million. And in terms of the narrative about how this story came about, I'm not without awareness that sometimes the delivery of this bridge has been in the context of other, the challenges within Peterborough City Council, that it's seen as, why are we doing it? Well, this is about the Combined Authority really working with the City Council. And on this, I'm going to go a little bit further afield. It's actually working with the City Council before the current administration. The previous City Council were very keen on this. It was something that the previous Deputy Mayor was very keen on making sure that was delivered. And the ability for us to kind of be fleet of foot, demonstrate that we have always, at the Combined Authority, and I as Mayor, have always believed that this is a place that you invest in. I reflect, as I did at the investment committee, the area where I come from, a bridge over the local river in the Tyne is seen as something that people become very proud of. And it might not just be the Tyne Bridge, it can be the Swing Bridge, it can be the Winkie Bridge as the bridge that connects the south side of the river in Gateshead to Newcastle. And that is sometimes when you deliver nice stuff to people, you begin to see the real benefit for a city. And that is why I'm very proud and very supportive of this investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, in support of this, as we were at the investment committee, and Tim Bellamy answered very well the question I asked around the funding. So totally in favour of it.
Thank you. And this does mark a very significant investment for a really exciting project, and really looking forward to seeing that bridge, crossing that bridge, in fact. Councillor Shaley, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, yeah, very, very briefly, because I have similar kind of questions. Comments really. And I remember a few years ago on this committee, being quite surprised at with the new university, there was an emphasis on a parking building, and it seemed like there were opportunities for active transport. And so I'm very happy, along with the station quarter developments and this part of access to the city centre by active means, that is a real transformation of this part of Peterborough. And the train station is such a well-connected train station and well-loved. And so the integration of this whole area is something that I very much look forward to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, this is only to note, I believe, because that money's already been voted through by the Investment Committee and the board. I also wanted to say I think it's really useful because we discussed this obviously at earlier stages, and it's now gone through that voting process elsewhere. I'm really grateful to see that coming back here. And I think that shows the way in which we are working out how to align the work of the Investment Committee with the work of the thematic committees. And I really welcome the fact that we've had the opportunity to get these reports back. So thank you. So we've noted that report, and we are now going on to item 11, which is the BP Wychford Roundabout non-motorised user feasibility study update. Robert Jones, Transport Manager, will introduce the next report. And Rob, I did just want to say, I know this is going to be your last committee with us, and how much we are all going to miss you very much. You bring so much to the work that we've done, huge technical expertise. You're also just a really, really good colleague to us as members, as well as I'm sure to our staff colleagues as well. And so on behalf of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, I wanted to thank you and wish you well in everything you do in the future. And with that, could you please introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This is the BP Wychford Roundabout non-motorised user feasibility study update. So it's no vote required. So the paper covers the current process that CCC have gone through in terms of the appointment of suppliers and contractors. And we are currently, as of the 22nd of January, in a consultation period, which is due to finish on the 5th of March. The consultation consists on a model that we've used, the 8141, which has been discussed earlier in this session, and covers a series of webinars and lots of various ways and innovative ways that we've used to engage with the public. Up until 9 a.m. this morning, we've had 355 survey responses to that, which is incredibly good. The consultation highlights what our objectives for this particular location, focusing in on safety and potential locations for the potential solutions that we're looking at. I'm using potential a lot because it is still at the concept stage. I'm working towards a preferred solution. Moving on to what the options that have been looked at. So there's the signalized crossing options, which are also being investigated with the CCC Highways team with regard to road speed reductions, in addition to not just making physical interventions on the highway. And there are a number of overbridge or footbridge options that have been looked at. I would hasten to add that we have, or CCC, Cambridge County Council, have looked at some underpass solutions because there has been a number of comments made. Have we looked into that? And we have. They are parked at this point in time because of the water table issues and associated utilisation of that form of option, but it's still under consideration. So we're in consultation, as I've already mentioned. We will be coming out of the consultation period in March, and because we're in consultation, I've added item number 2.8. So please, as we've already said, building up to another consultation, please enter into this. It's been a really good piece of work that everybody's put into. A lot of time and effort has got into preparing for this stage. So moving on to next stages, we've already got the funding as is indicated for this stage. We've got provisional funding for future phases, which is currently unapproved, but we've made passive provision for those in terms of what the solutions could be. Moving forward, we've got a number of objectives to close out after the consultation is finished, and with an objective of having a final report towards the end of April with board papers with the recommendations early in June of this year.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on this item? Yeah, I thought Councillor Sharp, you may want to go first there.
Yeah, I'll comment. Obviously, it's in East Cambs. Obviously, it's consultation, and I'm very pleased with what Robert's just said. 355 responses, and it only opened 2 days ago. That's good. I think if we could get that on most consultations, I think we'd be happy. Whether it carries on at that rate, we shall see. Yeah, I'm not going to bring it up now. I've got one or two slight concerns about the road layout from what I've seen on the maps, but obviously this is a consultation, so really I'm going to hold my powder, so to speak, until we see back what we get back from residents. But yeah, yes, it's good. It is something that we need at that junction. That junction does need some safe passage for cyclists and pedestrians. So yes, in support of it, and hopefully we'll see quite a few more responses. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add from my point of view as chair, it's really good to see this consultation out there, and fantastic to see the number of responses so far. And thank you to everyone for their work on this, because I know a lot of work has gone on to get us to this point. Are there any other comments? Councillor Shaler, please.
Yeah, just very briefly, it's clear that there was a problem left. This is a relatively new roundabout, and it's a shame that it wasn't dealt with when the roundabout was built, actually. But we've been left with this problem, and it is definitely a problem, and so it will have to be dealt with. So and I won't say that much more, given that the consultation is open until the 5th of March. Thank you very much.
Bennett.
Look, everybody's going to say it, aren't they? But I'm fully behind it. I've been asked by local representatives to go and visit the area. I have visited the area. I almost got run over. That's how it was dramatic in terms of the need for this thing. You made a comment there, Councillor Schuyler, that previous arrangements didn't allow for the connectivity from the BP garage over the roads, and there is a danger there. This is something which we should absolutely be getting behind. I'm grateful that the officers have found the way to get to this stage, as well as making provisional a potential 6 million available in terms of what comes back from the consultation. I think we have to be bold. I think we have to invest in active travel, and I think we have to prevent anybody at risk of getting serious injury at that area. There's a lot of reasons to go out of Ely to the Lancaster Way Park, and we need to get behind it to encourage everybody to feel safe when they get on a bike and are using active travel to get about. Thank you, officers, for the paper. Excellent.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions on this? Well, this again is an item to note. So, Rob, thank you very much once again, and thank you for coming today and for waiting so long to do this item. So we're now moving on to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee work programme, item 13. Are there any comments or questions on the work programme? Okay, we'll take that as a no. We'll be able to move on to the next item. Tim, I'm noticing, have we actually now sent that response off to? Yep. So just to update, that response to the East West Rail consultation has now been submitted. So well done for making sure that that happens so quickly. Thank you. Now, our final item today on the agenda is Peterborough Station Quarter. The cover report has been published and is in the public domain. The business case, Appendix A, is however exempt, and we need to vote on whether we move into private session to discuss this items. I'm proposing we do that now, because officers introducing the report wish to include some reference to that exempt material in their introduction. So I am therefore happy to propose a move into private session Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wakeford, thank you. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous in terms of voting members. So would the Governance Officer please note that is a unanimous decision to go into private session. As the vote was in favour of moving into private session to discuss the exempt Appendix A to item 15, I will now close the public meeting of the committee. This is the last item, so we will not reopen, and I'm closing that at what I make 13:14. And please could the recording now be, it says pause, but it's closed, isn't it, basically? And then I need to ask anyone